Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was a legendary trainer of 6 divine Pokémon, Naruto x Cynthia Pokémon. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Stranger with 6 Stars. The ancient stone tablets gleamed dully in the filtered sunlight, their weathered surfaces covered in symbols that had confounded archaeologists for decades. Cynthia Sharona Trace. Her fingertips over the intricate carvings, feeling the weight of history beneath her touch. Sinnoh's Solacean ruins had always been a place of mystery, but these particular inscriptions, discovered in a previously sealed chamber, were unlike anything she had encountered before. Strange, she murmured to her Garchomp, who stood vigilant nearby. These don't match any known unknown variations. Look at the spiral patterns here. And these triangular formations. Garchomp rumbled softly in response, her powerful body shifting as she sensed something beyond the chamber's entrance. The air felt charged, carrying an electrical quality that made the fine hairs on Cynthia's arms stand on end. Years of training as Sinnoh's champion had attuned her to the presence of powerful Pokémon, but this sensation was different. Older, foreign, somehow. Let's investigate, Cynthia whispered, straightening her black coat before proceeding down the narrow stone corridor. The passage opened onto a hidden valley nestled between mountains, invisible from the main ruins. Ancient stone pillars, half crumbled with age, formed a rough circle in the clearing. Sunlight poured through gaps in the surrounding peaks, illuminating the scene with golden beams that seemed almost deliberate in their placement. Cynthia's breath caught in her throat. In the center of the stone circle stood a young man she'd never seen before. Tall and athletic, with spiky blonde hair that caught the sunlight like burnished gold. His most striking features were 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek and eyes of such intense blue they seemed to contain their own light. He wore an unusual orange and black outfit that resembled no regional style she recognized. But it wasn't his appearance that made Cynthia freeze in her tracks. Surrounding him, arranged in a perfect hexagon, were 6 Pokémon that couldn't exist together. Legendary Pokémon whose mere individual sightings would make headlines across regions were gathered in harmonious formation around this stranger. A majestic Rayquaza hovered above, its serpentine body undulating gently in air currents only it could feel. Beside it floated Lunala, Win. GS spread to create a crescent that mirrored the waning moon visible in the daytime sky. The imposing form of Zekrom stood with electricity crackling between its turbine tail and massive clawed feet. Xerneas, its antlers glowing with the colors of life itself, stood in dignified silence. Nearby, the small form of Jirachi hovered, its wish tags fluttering without wind. And most peculiarly, a Ninette. Ales unlike any Cynthia had ever encountered. Larger than normal, with 9 tails that each glowed with different elemental energies, sat closest to the young man, its intelligent eyes fixed upon him with unmistakable devotion. Impossible, Cynthia whispered. No trainer in recorded history had ever commanded even 2 such legendary creatures, let alone 6. The power dynamics, the territorial instincts, the sheer improbability of earning the trust of beings considered nearly divine. The stranger stood with his eyes closed, palms raised outward. A visible energy, not electricity, not fire, something like shimmering heat waves colored a faint blue, emanated from his body, connecting to each of the legendary Pokémon in pulsing threads. Garchomp growled softly, instinctively responding to the tremendous power gathered before them. The sound broke the stillness of the moment. The young man's eyes snapped open, the blue irises instantly focusing on Cynthia's position. The legendary Pokémon reacted as one, bodies tensing and turning toward the perceived threat. Cynthia felt the weight of their collective attention like a physical pressure against her chest. Then, unexpectedly, the blonde stranger's serious expression melted into a warm smile. "Sorry about that," he called, his voice carrying a friendly timbre that seemed at odds with the legendary assembly surrounding him. "Didn't mean to put on a show. We're just doing some morning meditation." Morning meditation, with 6 legendary Pokémon, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Cynthia stepped forward, caution and curiosity warring within her. "I'm Cynthia Sharona, Sinnoh champion and researcher. May I ask who you are and how She gestured at the assembled legends, words failing her momentarily. How this is possible? The young man rubbed the back of his neck, a surprisingly boyish gesture. Name's Naruto Uzumaki. And as for this, he looked fondly at the creatures around him. It's a long story involving different dimensions, chakra connections, and a lot of ramen. But basically, where I come from, I have a special energy that seems to resonate with certain Pokémon here. He approached Cynthia with confident strides, the Nanetals falling into step beside him while the other legendary Pokémon maintained their positions, watching with varying degrees of interest. Chakra? Cynthia asked, the unfamiliar term catching her attention. Academic interest momentarily overrode her astonishment. Life energy, basically. Everyone has it where I'm from, but here. Naruto held out his palm where a swirling sphere of blue energy formed, rotating rapidly before dissipating. Here it seems I'm the only one, and these 6 responded to it. The casual display of energy manipulation, completely distinct from any known Pokémon move or human technology, confirmed Cynthia's suspicion that she was witnessing something unprecedented in the Pokémon world. Before she could form her next question, a deafening explosion shook the valley. Dust and debris cascaded from the mountain walls as 3 metallic discs descended from above, each bearing a distinctive emblem, a solar eclipse with a red slash through it. Team Eclipse, Cynthia hissed, recognizing the symbol from intelligence reports. A new organization with dangerous interest in legendary Pokémon and dimensional energy. 6 blah. CK uniformed figures leapt from the discs before they touched ground, deploying Pokémon mid-air. 2 Houndoom, a Bisharp, an Aegislash, a Drapion, and a particularly vicious-looking Hydreigon. Target confirmed, announced the lead operative, a woman with short silver hair and calculating eyes. Dimensional anomaly and legendary assets located. Commence extraction. Cynthia moved to stand beside Naruto. Garchomp already in battle stance. They've been tracking energy signatures across Sinnoh. They must have detected your chakra. Naruto's expression hardened, all traces of his earlier warmth vanishing. The transformation was striking, from friendly stranger to commanding presence in an instant. Kurama, he addressed the 9-tailed Nanetals. Protective formation, please. The fox, Pokémon, Kurama, let out a sound between a growl and a scoff, almost as if expressing an opinion. Then, with astonishing coordination, the 6 legendary Pokémon rearranged themselves, forming a perimeter around Naruto and Cynthia. You should know, Naruto said conversationally to Cynthia, even as the Team Eclipse operatives spread out for attack, my friends don't appreciate being called assets. The Hydreigon launched forward with a dragon rush that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Zekrom merely raised one massive claw, catching the 3-headed dragon mid-attack and holding it immobile. Eel as electricity coursed through its body. Impressive coordination, Cynthia noted, professional admiration cutting through her tension. But 6-on-6 still requires strategy. Garchomp, Dragon Claw on the Bisharp. Her partner shot forward with blinding speed, but the Team Eclipse operatives had clearly prepared for champion-level opposition. The Bisharp parried with iron defense while the Aegislash moved to flank Garchomp. They're well trained, Naruto observed. But training isn't everything. He made a strange hand sign, fingers interlocked in a pattern Cynthia had never seen. Instantly, the air around him distorted, and 2 perfect copies of Naruto appeared beside him, not illusions but seemingly solid duplicates. Cynthia's eyes widened. That's not a Pokémon move. Yeah, Naruto finished with a grin. Shadow Clone Jutsu comes in handy. The 2 copies dashed toward different points of the battlefield while the original Naruto closed his eyes briefly. When he reopened them, they had changed. The pupils elongated horizontally like a toad's, with orange pigmentation surrounding them. Sage mode, he murmured, and Cynthia felt a shift in the air around him, as if nature itself were condensing around his form. One of the Team Eclipse operatives shouted, the target is using unknown techniques. Deploy containment measures. The Drapion unleashed a toxic attack that spiraled toward Naruto. But Xerneas stepped between them, its antlers glowing as it neutralized the poison with a pulse of purifying energy. Meanwhile, Cynthia was fully engaged with 2 of the Eclipse operatives. Her Garchomp moving with practiced precision to counter their attacks. Whatever they're after, they came prepared, she called to Naruto. That containment device on the lead operative's back is similar to technology used to temporarily suppress legendary Pokémon. Naruto nodded, understanding the implication. His Rayquaza had engaged the Houndoom duo, keeping them at bay. With controlled bursts of air that didn't damage the surrounding ruins but effectively disrupted their attacks. We should end this quickly, Naruto decided. I'd rather not reveal too much about my abilities if these guys are collecting data. As if responding to his assessment, Lunala moved into position above the battlefield and began gathering ghostly energy between its wings. Jirachi's eyes glowed blue, creating a protective barrier around Cynthia and Garchomp just as one of Naruto's clones completed a spinning kick that sent an operative flying into a stone pillar. The coordination as unlike anything Cynthia had ever witnessed, not just between trainer and Pokémon, but between the legendary Pokémon themselves, operating with a synchronicity that went beyond trained commands. The silver-haired leader assessed the situation with growing frustration. Fall back to secondary positions. Deploy the dimensional dampener. From the largest disk emerged a pyramidal device that began emitting pulses of dark energy. The effect was immediate. The legendary Pokémon visibly flinched, their movements becoming slightly labored. That device is disrupting their connection to their natural dimensional energies. Cynthia realized aloud, her academic knowledge providing insight. Legendary Pokémon maintain links to their home dimensions or cosmic forces. Naruto's expression darkened. Bad move, he said simply. The nine-tailed Nanetals, Kurama, stepped forward, its eyes glowing with an ancient intelligence. Each of its 9 tails began to glow with a different elemental energy: fire, water, electricity, ice. And others Cynthia couldn't immediately identify. Naruto placed his hand on Kurama's head, and the chakra connection between them intensified visibly. I try not to show off too much, he said, his voice carrying an edge of steel beneath its casual tone. But when people threaten my friends. Kurama opened its mouth, and within it formed a spiraling sphere of condensed energy. Far larger and more complex than the one Naruto had demonstrated earlier. The sphere contained what appeared to be miniature elemental storms, each corresponding to the energies in Kurama's tails. Tailed Beast Bomb, Naruto said quietly. The sphere launched toward the pyramidal device, moving with such speed that it seemed to distort the air around it. When it connected, the Rasul Ting explosion wasn't the destructive blast Cynthia expected, but an implosion of energy that collapsed the device into itself, followed by a controlled shockwave that knocked the Team Eclipse operative Vase off their feet without damaging the ancient ruins. The silver-haired leader staggered upright, her expression a mixture of fear and scientific fascination. This data exceeds all projections, she said into a wrist communicator. The subject isn't just commanding the legendaries, he's sharing energy with them, enhancing their natural abilities. Naruto appeared directly behind her in a flash of movement too quick for Cynthia to track. The subject doesn't appreciate being studied, he said, his voice level but carrying an unmistakable warning. And has excellent hearing. Before the woman could react, Naruto touched her forehead with 2 fingers. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed unconscious. The remaining Team Eclipse operatives, seeing their leader fallen and their technology neutralized, recalled their Pokémon and retreated to the hovering discs, which accelerated away over the mountains with surprising speed. As quickly as it had begun, the confrontation was over. Cynthia surveyed the valley, noting with appreciation that despite the battle's intensity, the ancient ruins remained largely undamaged. Naruto's shadow clones dissipated in puffs of smoke, and he exhaled deeply as the orange pigmentation faded from around his eyes. The legendary Pokémon relaxed their battle stances, returning to more natural positions around him. Sorry about that, Naruto said, turning to Cynthia with an apologetic smile that contrasted sharply with the battle prowess he'd just displayed. These guys have been popping up whenever I stay in one place too long. Part of why I keep moving. Cynthia approached him, professional curiosity overriding caution. That energy you used, chakra, you called it, it's not like anything in our world. And that technique with your duplicates, are you human? The question came out more bluntly than she intended, but Naruto laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Last I checked, yeah. Just not from around here. He gestured at the sky. Way not from around here. Different dimension entirely, from what I've pieced together. Cynthia's mind raced with implications. The Team Eclipse operative's words returned to her: dimensional anomaly. The strange inscriptions in the ruins that matched no known ancient language. The unprecedented gathering of legendary Pokémon responding to an energy foreign to their world. "You're a researcher, right?" Naruto asked, interrupting her thoughts. "Studying those stone tablets in there?" Cynthia nodded. "Ancient writings, myths, legends, particularly those concerning the creation of Sinnoh and dimensional boundaries. It's my specialization alongside being champion." Naruto glanced toward the ruins, then back to Cynthia with unexpected eagerness in his eyes. "Any chance you've come across anything about people crossing between worlds? Or maybe strange energy signatures appearing throughout history?" The question caught Cynthia off guard. Despite his obvious power, there was something invulnerable in Naruto's expression, a hopefulness that suggested he'd been searching for answers for some time. "There are myths about travelers from beyond the stars," she said carefully. "And certain legendary Pokémon like Palkia are associated with spatial distortion. But concrete evidence of dimensional travelers is scarce." Naruto's shoulders dropped slightly. "Figured as much. Been looking for almost a year now. Bits and pieces here and there, but nothing solid on how I got here or how to get back." The admission revealed a new dimension to this mysterious trainer. Beneath the confide in power lay uncertainty and perhaps loneliness. Cynthia found herself intrigued not just by the academic questions his existence raised, but by the person himself. "A year," she repeated thoughtfully. "And in that time, you've formed bonds with 6 legendary Pokémon that most trainers never even glimpse in a lifetime." Kurama made a sound that remarkably resembled a snort, and Naruto grinned affectionately at the fox Pokémon. "Yeah, well, Kurama here came with me somehow. Different form, but same ornery personality." The Nenettles swatted at him with one tail, though the gesture seemed more affectionate than truly irritated. "The others, I think my chakra feels familiar to them somehow. Like it resonates with whatever dimensional energy they're connected to." Cynthia considered this information carefully. Her research had often suggested that legendary Pokémon existed partially in dimensions beyond normal perception, which might explain their reaction to Naruto's extra-dimensional energy. "These Team Eclipse people," she said, changing tack. "They've been tracking you specifically. Among other things, they're obsessed with legendary Pokémon and dimensional energy. Been collecting artifacts, hunting down myths." Naruto's expression grew serious. "They're not just collectors or power-hungry trainers. They want something bigger, something about breaking barriers between worlds." The implications sent a chill down Cynthia's spine. As Sinnoh champion, she was well aware of the catastrophic potential of tampering with dimensional boundaries. The incident with Dia, Lga and Palkia years earlier had nearly torn reality apart. "That aligns with intelligence reports," she confirmed. "They've been excavating sites connected to ultra wormholes in Alola and studying dimensional distortion in Turnback Cave." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you've been keeping tabs on them too." "The champions from each region share information about potential threats," Cynthia explained. "Team Eclipse has been on our radar, but information is limited. Their operatives are highly trained and unusually well equipped." A thoughtful silence fell between them as Rayquaza descended lower, circling lazily above Naruto's head. The sight was still extraordinary to Cynthia. The sky-high Pokémon, known for its solitary nature and fierce territoriality, behaving with almost playful familiarity. "I have a proposition," Cynthia said suddenly, decision crystallizing in her mind. "My research into dimensional anomalies and legendary Pokémon spans multiple regions. If you looking for answers about your arrival in our world, working together would benefit us both. Plus, with Team Eclipse targeting you, having allies would be advantageous." Naruto considered the offer, absently reaching up to stroke Rayquaza's snout as the massive dragon dipped near him, a casual interaction with a legendary Pokémon that would have made headlines across regions if witnessed by anyone else. "Been working alone for a while," he admitted. "Mostly to keep a low profile and avoid putting others at risk. But after today," he glanced at the unconscious Team Eclipse leader, who was now securely bound with what appeared to be energy restraints. "They're getting bolder, and I'm not making much progress on my own." Cynthia felt a spark of excitement. The academic potential alone was extraordinary. First-hand study of how legendary Pokémon interacted with extra-dimensional energy could revolutionize understanding of Pokémon origins. And beyond the research opportunities, something about Naruto himself intrigued her. The contradiction of immense power coupled with genuine warmth, the mystery of his origins balanced against his straightforward demeanor. Then it's settled, she said, extending her hand. We'll begin by comparing my research notes with your experiences, then formulate a more comprehensive investigation strategy. Naruto's handshake was firm, his smile brightening his whiskered features. Sounds like a plan. Fair warning though, trouble tends to find me. I'm the champion of Sinnoh, Cynthia replied with a small smile of her own. Handling trouble is part of the job description. Kurama made another snorting sound, sharing a look with Garchomp that seemed to communicate volumes without words. As they prepared to leave the valley, Naruto approached each of his legendary partners. Rather than returning them to Pokeballs, which Cynthia realized with a start she hadn't seen him use, he spoke to each quietly. 5 of the 6 legendaries nodded in a P-parent understanding before disappearing in different directions, Rayquaza soaring into the clouds, Lunala slipping into a shadow that seemed to lead elsewhere, Zekrom launching into the sky with electrical propulsion. Xerneas melting into the forest at the valley's edge, and Jirachi simply vanishing with a twinkle of light. Only Kurama remained, taking position beside Naruto with the air of a permanent companion. They're not going far, Naruto explained, noticing Cynthia's questioning look. Just avoiding attention. We have ways to reconnect when needed. No Pokeballs? Cynthia asked, unable to contain her professional curiosity. Naruto shook his head. Tried that early on. Didn't take. Whatever connection we have works differently. They're partners, not possessions. He glanced down at Kurama with obvious affection. This grumpy guy refuses to leave my side though. Kurama's expression, remarkably expressive for a Pokémon, managed to convey both irritation and loyalty in equal measure. As they made their way back through the stone corridors of the ruins, Cynthia found herself stealing glances at her new companion. Everything about Naruto defied conventional understanding of Pokémon training, dimensional theory, and energy manipulation. He was a walking research subject, a powerful ally, and potentially a key to understanding the fundamental nature of legendary Pokémon. Yet it was the human element that most captured her interest. The flashes of loneliness beneath his confident exterior, the genuine care he showed for his Pokémon partners, the way his eyes lit up at the prospect of finding answers about his situation. Those markings, Naruto said suddenly, pointing to the inscription Cynthia had been studying earlier. They look a little like sealing jutsu from my world. Cynthia blinked in surprise. You recognize the patterns? Not exactly, but there's a familiarity to them. Like reading a dialect of your own language. The spiral formations especially. Another piece of the puzzle. Cynthia mentally added comparative symbol analysis to their research agenda. My family specialized in sealing techniques, Naruto continued, tracing a finger over the spiral pattern. Energy containment, dimensional pockets, that sort of thing. If these are related somehow, it might explain why I ended up in this specific region. The casual mention of Hi's family, the first personal detail he'd volunteered, didn't escape Cynthia's notice. Were they with you when you arrived? A shadow passed over Naruto's features, there and gone so quickly Cynthia almost missed it. No, I was alone when I came through. My memories of just before are fuzzy, side effect of dimensional travel, maybe. The partial answer held volumes of unspoken context, but Cynthia didn't press. Whatever journey had brought Naruto to their world clearly carried emotional weight. They emerged from the ruins into the late afternoon sunlight. The unconscious Team Eclipse leader had been secured to Garchomp's back for transport to authorities. We should head to Celestic Town, Cynthia suggested. I have a research base there with better security than most Pokémon centers, given recent events. Naruto nodded, looking to the horizon where the sun was beginning its descent behind Mount Coronet's imposing silhouette. For a brief moment, his usual confident demeanor slipped, revealing someone young and far from home, carrying burdens few could comprehend. Then Kurama nudged his hand with a cold nose, and Naruto's smile returned as he scratched behind the Nenettle's ears. Lead the way, champion, he said with renewed enthusiasm. I've got a feeling this is the beginning of something interesting. As Cynthia released her Togekiss for transport, she couldn't help but agree with Naruto's assessment. In a world where she'd thought few mysteries remained to be uncovered, he represented an entirely new frontier of discovery. Behind them, unnoticed, one of the stone tablets in the ruins began to glow faintly with the same blue energy Naruto had manipulated. Ancient symbols shifted subtly, responding to the presence of chakra for the first time in millennia. The wheels of prophecy had begun to turn. Celestic Town nestled in the shadow of Mount Coronet like a time capsule, its traditional architecture and quiet streets preserving the essence of Sinnoh's ancient culture. At the town's heart stood the cave containing the region's oldest known paintings, depictions of Dialga and Palkia that had fascinated researchers for generations. Adjacent to this historic site sat Cynthia's research base, a modest building that belied the advanced technology and valuable artifacts within. As the champion led Naruto through its security measures, she couldn't help noticing how Kurama's tails twitched with interest at the energy barriers they passed through. "Impressive setup," Naruto commented, eyes roaming over the rare books and specialized equipment. Quote, "Reminds me of the intelligence division back home. Being champion has its advantages," Cynthia replied, activating the central computer system with a biometric scan. "Funding for research most professors would envy. Plus security clearance for information too sensitive for public knowledge." The main research room illuminated as they entered, walls lined with ancient texts and artifacts, multiple computer terminals displaying data streams, and a large holographic projection table at the center. One wall was dedicated entirely to maps marking sites of legendary Pokémon sightings and dimensional disturbances across regions. Naruto whistled appreciatively. "And here I've been camping in forests and sneaking into libraries after hours." "You've been researching on your own all this time?" Cynthia asked, surprised by the image of this powerful trainer hunched over reference books by flashlight. He shrugged, the gesture casually humble. "Had to understand where I'd ended up somehow. Learned about Pokémon, trainers. The whole system. Figured out pretty quick I wasn't in my world anymore." Cynthia activated the holographic table, which displayed a three-dimensional map of known dimensional weak points across the Pokémon world. "What's the last thing you remember before arriving here?" Naruto's expression grew distant. "A battle. A big one. There was this enemy who could travel between dimensions themselves. We were fighting, and then..." He made a vague gesture. "Woke up in Viridian Forest with Kurama beside me, both of us changed. Him into this form, me with fragments of my memories missing." Kurama made a soft growling sound that somehow conveyed agreement. "And the other 5 legendary Pokémon?" Cynthia prompted. "Found them one by one over months. Or maybe they found me." A smile touched Naruto's lips. "Rayquaza was first. Nearly blew me out of the sky when I was trying to use chakra to enhance my jumping distance. Once we understood each other, the others seemed to sense something. Lunala appeared during a full moon when I was meditating. Zekrom during a lightning storm. Xerneas in a forest that had been damaged by poachers. Jirachi while I was sleeping under meteor showers. The pattern was fascinating. Legendary Pokémon associated with natural forces gravitating toward Naruto's extra-dimensional energy during moments of elemental intensity. And they all just accepted you as their trainer." Cynthia couldn't keep the academic skepticism from her voice. Decades of research had established how fiercely independent legendary Pokémon tended to be. Naruto chuckled, exchanging a look with Kurama. "Not exactly. There were negotiations, tests. I don't think of myself as their trainer in the way most people use the term. We're partners. The Y recognized something in my chakra that resonated with them. As if to demonstrate, he held out his palm where chakra began to swirl visible, a blue energy that pulsated with vitality. Kurama's 9 tails rose slightly, each tip glowing in response to the energy. Chakra contains both physical and spiritual energy blended together, Naruto explained. In my world, we use it for various techniques. Here, it seems to interact with whatever energy connects legendary Pokémon to their respective cosmic forces. Cynthia's mind raced with the implications. That could explain why Team Eclipse is so interested in you. If they're researching dimensional boundaries, your ability to naturally bridge different energy systems would be invaluable data. Or a power source, Naruto added grimly. The IR leader mentioned extraction, before attacking. The conversation paused as Cynthia's computer terminal chimed with an incoming transmission. The screen displayed Lance, the Dragon Master of the Indigo Plateau. Cynthia. Lance greeted formally before his eyes shifted to Naruto with visible surprise. I see the reports were accurate. You know about me? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. Lance's expression remained professionally neutral. Multiple sightings of a trainer with unusual abilities accompanied by legendary Pokémon have been logged across regions. The champions have been monitoring the situation. Cynthia stepped forward. Lance, this is Naruto Uzumaki. He's assisting with my research into dimensional anomalies. Naruto, this is Lance, Johto champion and coordinator of our inter-regional security efforts. Naruto offered a respectful nod. Nice to meet you. Sorry if I've caused any concerns with my traveling. The concern isn't with you specifically, Lance clarified, but rather with Team Eclipse's escalating activities. I'm calling because we've detected unusual energy readings at Spear Pillar, similar to patterns observed before Palkia and Dialga manifestations. Cynthia's expression sharpened. They're moving faster than anticipated. Attempting to access the Creation Trio directly would be catastrophically dangerous. Agreed. We're mobilizing, but given your proximity and expertise. Lance's implication hung in the air. We'll investigate immediately, Cynthia confirmed. Send all available data to my secure server. As the transmission ended, Naruto was already moving toward the door, Kurama alert at his side. I'm guessing this Spear Pillar place is important. It's where our world's dimensions are thinnest, Cynthia explained, gathering equipment with practiced efficiency. The summit of Mount Coronet, where legend says Arceus created Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina, the Pokémon that control time, space, and antimatter respectively. Naruto whistled low. Time and space. No wonder these Eclipse guys are interested. If they're attempting to summon or control the Creation Trio, they could tear reality apart. Cynthia secure. Add a specialized Pokech to her wrist, an advanced model with dimensional energy detection capabilities. Even well-intentioned research at Spear Pillar requires extreme caution. Outside the research base, the evening sky had darkened to deep indigo, stars beginning to appear above Mount Coronet's imposing silhouette. Cynthia released her Togekiss again, the graceful Pokémon floating down to allow her to mount. Naruto, however, simply closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they had changed to the toad-like sage mode Cynthia had witnessed earlier. Give me a second, he said, placing his palm against the ground. In this mode, I can sense chakra and natural energy for miles. Cynthia watched, fascinated, as Naruto's expression shifted through concentration to concern. There's definitely something happening up there, he confirmed. Multiple energy signatures, people and Pokémon, and something else. A distortion that feels wrong. Unstable. How quickly can you get there? Cynthia asked. In answer, Naruto bit his thumb slightly, drawing a small amount of blood before performing a series of hand signs and slamming his palm to the ground. Summoning Jutsu. A complex circular symbol appeared beneath his hand, followed by an explosion of smoke. As it cleared, Rayquaza hovered before them, its serpentine body undulating majestically against the night sky. That's not how Pokémon are typically called, Cynthia noted, professional curiosity momentarily overriding the urgency of the situation. Told you, different system, Naruto replied with a hint of pride. He leapt onto Rayquaza's back with practiced ease, Kurama jumping up behind him. Need a lift? Cynthia hesitated only briefly before recalling her Togekiss and accepting Naruto's outstretched hand. Sensation of mounting the legendary dragon was unlike anything she'd experienced. Rayquaza's body radiated a primal power that made even her seasoned Garchomp seem tame by comparison. Hold on, Naruto advised, his voice carrying a note of excitement despite the serious circumstances. Rayquaza isn't known for gentle flights. The warning proved immediately accurate as the sky-high Pokémon surged upward with breathtaking speed. Cutting through the night air toward Mount Coronet's peak. Wind rushed past them with such force that speech became impossible. Cynthia found herself holding tightly to Naruto's shoulders, impressed despite herself at how naturally he moved with Rayquaza's aerial maneuvers. In minutes, they had covered distance that would have taken hours by conventional travel. Spear Pillar's ancient columns came into view, silhouetted against clouds illuminated by an unnatural light from below. Rayquaza circled once, giving them a clear view of the situation, at least twice. NTY Team Eclipse operatives had established a perimeter around the central platform, advanced equipment positioned at strategic points. At the center, a pyramidal device larger than the one they'd encountered earlier pulsed with ominous energy, creating visible distortions in the air above it. They're forcing open a dimensional rift, Cynthia realized, her voice carrying over the wind as Rayquaza slowed its approach. The temporal and spatial energy readings must be off the charts. Naruto nodded grimly, and it feels unstable, like punching a hole without knowing what's on the other side. He glanced back at her. Direct approach or stealth? The question, casually deferring to her strategic judgment despite his obvious power, impressed Cynthia. Observation first. We need to understand exactly what they're attempting before intervening. Naruto directed Rayquaza to descend behind a massive stone outcropping that provided cover while offering a view of the operation. As they dismounted, Cynthia activated her specialized Poketch, its sensors immediately registering alarming energy patterns. They've calibrated the equipment to resonate with specific dimensional frequencies, she explained, reviewing the data. Not just attempting to summon Dialga and Palkia, but to create a sustained bridge between dimensions. Like a portal? Naruto asked, his expression sharpening with interest. Potentially. Though controlling such a connection would require. Cynthia broke off as her device's readings spiked dramatically. They're accelerating the process. Whatever they're doing, it's working. The air above the pyramidal device had begun to shimmer and tear, revealing glimpses of something beyond. Not the swirling void typical of ultra wormholes, but structured spaces that paired and disappeared too quickly to identify. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he studied the dimensional tiers. Those aren't random. They're cycling through specific dimensions, searching for something. Or someone, Cynthia said quietly. Glancing at him, understanding dawned in Naruto's expression. They're looking for my world. Or others like me. Before they could discuss further implications, a commanding voice cut through the night air. The silver-haired Team Eclipse leader, evidently escaped from custody, stood atop the central platform, arms raised dramatically. Calibration complete. Lock onto dimensional signature Alpha 9 tailed and stabilize the portal. The equipment surrounding the pyramid surged with power, focusing the dimensional rift into a single, stable opening. Through it, Cynthia caught glimpses of a landscape unlike anything in her world. Strange angular buildings, monuments carved into a mountainside, figures moving with impossible speed. Naruto had gone completely still, his eyes fixed on the portal with an intensity that seemed to radiate from his entire being. That's Konoha, he whispered. My village. The longing in his voice was palpable, a sudden vulnerability breaking through his confident demeanor. For the first time, Cynthia fully comprehended what it meant that he had been stranded in their world. Not just a powerful visitor, but someone cut off from home, family, and everything familiar. They've found your world using your energy signature, she realized. That's why they've been tracking you. The moment of contemplation shattered. As the portal began to fluctuate wildly, its edges destabilizing as something massive began to push through from the other side. The Team Eclipse operatives scrambled to adjust their equipment, many backing away in obvious fear. This is beyond your control, Cynthia shouted, abandoning stealth as she stepped forward, Garchomp's Pokeball ready in her hand. Shut it down before you tear both dimensions apart. The silver-haired leader turned, her expression a mixture of triumph and madness. Champion Cynthia, just in time to witness the dawn of a new era. Soon we'll have access to powers beyond this limited world. Naruto moved with blinding speed, appearing beside Cynthia with Kurama at his side. Whatever's coming through isn't friendly, he warned, chakra visibly gathering around his body. I can feel a malevolent intent. Quote, the portal widened suddenly, and through it emerged a massive clawed hand, followed by a reptilian head with glowing red eyes. The creature bore a superficial resemblance to a Pokémon but moved with unnatural fluidity, as if the laws of physics applied differently to its form. What is that? Cynthia demanded, instinctively stepping back from the overwhelming aura of wrongness that emanated from the creature. A summoning from my world, Naruto answered, his voice tight with recognition. But corrupted somehow. The dimensional crossing is warping its nature. The Team Eclipse leader's triumphant expression had given way to fear as the creature continued to emerge, far larger than apparently anticipated. Containment measures. Deploy the suppression field immediately. Their technology proved woefully inadequate as the creature fully manifested, a twisted chimera of reptile, insect, and something otherworldly. It roared, the sound distorting the air around it, and swept one massive limb across the platform, sending Team Eclipse operatives and equipment flying. "We need to close that portal," Cynthia said, releasing Garchomp. "And Kontai, and whatever that is before it can leave the mountain." Naruto nodded, already summoning his sage mode. "I'll handle the creature. It's from my world, my responsibility. Can you and Kurama work on shutting down their equipment?" The division of tasks made tactical sense. Cynthia's knowledge of the technology combined with Kurama's elemental abilities could potentially disrupt the portal generation, while Naruto's unique powers might be effective against the extra-dimensional threat. "Understood," Cynthia confirmed, surprised by how naturally they had fallen into a cooperative strategy. "Garchomp, cover us while we approach the main generator." As Cynthia and Kurama moved toward the pyramidal device, Naruto faced the creature directly. His hands formed complex signs in rapid succession before he called out, "Multi-shadow clone jutsu." The air filled with dozens of Naruto duplicates, each solid and apparently capable of independent action. They surrounded the creature, attacking from multiple angles with coordinated precision that spoke of extensive combat experience. Cynthia forced herself to focus on her own task, though the display of power unlike anything in the Pokémon world was difficult to ignore. She reached the main control panel as Kurama used precision fire blasts to clear away Team Eclipse operatives attempting to stop them. The system is looking for specific dimensional coordinates, she realized. Examining the interface, they've been collecting data on Naruto's energy signature to locate his home dimension. Kurama growled, Ninetales swishing with obvious agitation as he looked between the portal, still showing glimpses of what Naruto had called Konoha, and the battle raging nearby. The creature had dispatched many of Naruto's clones, but the real Naruto now hovered above the battlefield, suspended on what appeared to be a platform of swirling wind. His hands held a spiraling sphere of energy far larger than the one he had demonstrated earlier. "Massive Rasengan," he shouted, driving the technique directly into the creature's center mass. The impact created a controlled explosion of energy that forced the creature back toward the portal without damaging Spear Pilar's ancient structure, a display of power modulation that impressed Cynthia even as she worked to understand the portal technology. "The dimensional coordinates are locked with a biometric key," she told Kurama, who seemed to understand her words with uncanny comprehension. "We need to find the Eclipse leader." The nine-tailed fox nodded and closed its eyes briefly. One tie. L pointed unerringly toward a cluster of fallen equipment where the silver-haired leader was attempting to activate a secondary device. "Garchomp, Dragon Rush," Cynthia commanded. Her partner streaked across the platform, intercepting the Team Eclipse leader moments before she could complete her task. The woman found herself pinned beneath Garchomp's formidable claws, the secondary device knocked beyond reach. "Override code," Cynthia demanded, approaching with Kurama at her side. "Before that portal destabilizes completely." The leader laughed despite her precarious position. "Too late, champion. The dimensional bridge is self-sustaining now. Soon, we'll have access to powers beyond your comprehension." Kurama snarled, all nine tails rising as his body temperature elevated dramatically. The intimidation effect was considerable. The woman's defiant expression wavered. "The fox," she whispered, eyes widening. "It's not just a variant Ninetales, is it? It's from there. The same world." Before Cynthia could respond, a tremendous crash drew everyone's attention. The corrupted creature had broken free of Naruto's containment efforts and was now halfway back through the portal, pulling itself toward what appeared to be populated areas on the other side. Naruto landed beside Cynthia, breathing heavily but eyes blazing with determination. "It's trying to escape to my village. I can't let that happen." The Team Eclipse leader's expression shifted to one of calculating interest. "Your home is on the other side. Don't you want to return? To go back?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Cynthia found herself holding her breath, suddenly aware of how little she truly knew about this extraordinary trainer who had appeared in her life mere hours ago. Chu's gaze moved from the portal, showing clear views of a village built around a mountain carved with faces, to Kurama, who met his eyes with an intensity that transcended normal Pokémon trainer relationships. Something unspoken passed between them. "Of course I want to go home," Naruto said finally, his voice soft but firm. "But not at the cost of two worlds being torn apart." With that, he turned back to the portal with renewed purpose. "I need to close it from both sides. There's only one way to do this." Before Cynthia could ask what he meant, Naruto bit his thumb again and performed an even more complex series of hand signs. Summoning Jutsu. Toad Sage Mode Alliance. The resulting explosion of smoke cleared to reveal Naruto's remaining legendary partners, Lunala, Zekrom, Xerneas, and Jirachi, appearing simultaneously alongside Rayquaza and Kurama. The Team Eclipse leader gasped at the unprecedented gathering of legendary power, her scientific ambition momentarily overriding her fear. Impossible. The territorial conflicts alone should prevent this proximity. Naruto stood at the center of the 6 legendary Pokémon, chakra visibly flowing between them in a complex network of energy. "They're lending me their power, and I'm giving them mine. That's what partnership means." He turned to Cynthia, his expression solemn. "I need to go through and seal it from the other side, then find my way back properly. Can you handle things here?" The implication was clear. He was trusting her not just with containing the situation at Spear Pillar, but with the welfare of his legendary partners during his absence. "How will you return?" Cynthia asked, practical concerns overwhelming the strange sense of loss she felt at his imminent departure. "There are proper ways to travel between dimensions," Naruto assured her with a confident smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ways that don't tear reality apart. I just need to find the right scrolls back home." Kurama stepped forward, Ninetales swishing with what appeared to be agitation. A sound emerged from the fox that was almost like speech, a complex vocalization that carried clear meaning despite not being human language. Naruto's eyes widened. "You're sure?" Another series of sounds, accompanied by definitive head movements. "Kurama wants to stay," Naruto translated, surprise evident in his voice. "To help my Ntain the seal from this side while I work from the other." The revelation that Kurama could apparently communicate complex concepts to Naruto, and that the legendary Pokémon was choosing to separate from its partner, added yet another layer to their already extraordinary relationship. "I'll make sure Kurama is protected," Cynthia promised, understanding the magnitude of trust being placed in her. Naruto nodded, gratitude evident in his expression. Then, in a move that caught Cynthia completely off guard, he stepped forward and embraced her briefly. "Thanks for believing me," he said simply. "For not treating me like a threat or a research subject. It's been a long year of being alone in a strange world." Before she could formulate a response to the unexpected gesture, Naruto had already moved back to the portal's edge. His 5 remaining legendary partners positioned themselves in formation around him, energy flowing between them in visible streams. Each of them represents an aspect of natural energy in this world. Naruto explained, chakra beginning to glow around his body with increasing intensity. "Together, we can create a seal that will close this rift properly, without the dimensional backlash Team Eclipse's method would cause." The creature was still partially emerged from the portal, roaring in fury as it sensed Naruto's intentions. With a final surge, it lunged toward them, only to be met by Zekrom's bolt strike and Rayquaza's dragon ascent in perfect coordination. "Now," Naruto called, and the 5 legendary Pokémon released focused beams of energy that converged on him. Cynthia shielded her eyes as Naruto's form became momentarily too bright to look at directly. When the light subsided, he stood transformed, his orange and black outfit now glowing with patterns that resembled the markings on each of his legendary partners, his eyes shining with unnatural light. "Sixth Path Sage Mode. Legendary Harmony," he announced, voice resonating with power beyond his physical form. With movements too fast for Cynthia to follow, Naruto created what appeared to be complex seals in the air around the portal, glowing symbols that attached themselves to the dimensional tear's edges and began to contract, forcing the creature back through. "I'll find a way back," Naruto called to Cynthia as he prepared to leap through the narrowing opening. "Take care of Kurama until then." With a final surge of energy, Naruto propelled himself through the portal, disappearing into the world beyond. The last glimpse Cynthia caught was of surprised faces on the other eyed people in strange clothing staring in shock as Naruto appeared among them. Then the portal contracted completely, the seals Naruto had created glowing briefly before settling into a stable pattern. And around where the tear had been, visible but dormant, like a closed door rather than a collapsed passage. In the sudden silence that followed, Cynthia became aware of the Team Eclipse operatives being rounded up by her Garchomp and Kurama. The silver-haired leader stared at the sealed portal with a mixture of scientific fascination and bitter disappointment. "You have no idea what you've prevented," she said to Cynthia. "The advancement of our entire world, access to powers and knowledge beyond our current limitations. At the cost of dimensional stability and potentially both worlds," Cynthia countered. Her professional demeanor returning as she secured the woman's restraints. "There are proper channels for research, proper methods for exploration. Your recklessness nearly caused catastrophe." As international police officers arrived to take custody of the Team Eclipse members, Cynthia found herself standing with Kurama and the 5 legendary Pokémon Naruto had left behind. Conventional wisdom suggested they would depart immediately without their trainer, return to their respective territories and natural patterns. Instead, they remained in formation, their attention focused on Kurama, who appeared to be communicating with them through means Cynthia couldn't perceive. After what seemed like a silent conference, the legendary Pokémon turned to Cynthia with unmistakable intentionality. Rayquaza lowered its massive head to her level, studying her with ancient eyes that held intelligence far beyond ordinary Pokémon. "You're staying," Cynthia realized aloud. "All of you, to wait for him." Kurama made a sound of affirmation, and the other 5 responded with their respective calls, a chorus of legendary voices that carried across Spear Pillar with harmonic resonance. The implications were staggering. 6 legendary Pokémon, choosing to remain together, apparently committed to a human from another dimension. Everything Cynthia thought she understood about legendary behavior patterns would need revision. As dawn broke over Mount Coronet, painting Spear Pillar in golden light, Cynthia found herself standing among beings of myth and legend, united by connection to someone who had entered her life less than a day ago and already altered it irrevocably. Kurama moved to stand beside her, Ninetales swaying gently in the morning breeze. The fox's intelligent eyes met hers with clear purpose, as if to say, "He will return, and we will be waiting." "Then I suppose we have research to do," Cynthia said aloud, her academic mind already formulating approaches to understanding dimensional travel through proper, stable means. "If Naruto's going to find his way back, we should be prepared to help from this side." The 6 legendary Pokémon responded with sounds of agreement, settling into positions around Spear Pillar like guardians of the sealed portal. Their presence would undoubtedly draw attention, raise questions Cynthia wasn't yet prepared to answer fully. But as she gazed at the sealed dimensional doorway, Cynthia felt a certainty that transcended scientific evidence. Naruto Uzumaki had entered their world once before, against all probability. With determination like his, finding a way back seemed not just possible, but inevitable. And when he did return, she would have questions about his world, his powers, and most intriguingly, about the extraordinary connection he shared with 6 divine Pokémon who were willing to wait for however long his journey home might take. The first chapter of their story had concluded, but Cynthia suspected the most fascinating pages remained yet to be written. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Psychic Resonance. Dawn painted Celestic Town in hues of amber and gold as Cynthia pored over ancient manuscripts spread across her research table. 3 days had passed since the incident at Spear Pillar, and sleep had become a distant memory. Dark circles shadowed her eyes as she compared symbols from the Solician Yuans with obscure references to dimensional travel found in Sinnoh's oldest texts. Kurama lay curled nearby, Ninetales occasionally twitching as the fox Pokémon monitored her progress with intelligent eyes. The other 5 legendaries had dispersed, not far, Cynthia suspected, but maintaining a lower profile than would be possible if they all remained together. The sound of the video communication system interrupted her concentration. Lance's stern face appeared on screen, his expression more severe than usual. "The international police have completed their initial interrogation of the Team Eclipse operatives," he reported without preamble. "Their leader, Drive, Vega, refuses to cooperate, but junior members have revealed concerning information. Cynthia straightened, brushing platinum blonde hair from her face. What kind of information? They've been monitoring dimensional disturbances for over 2 years. Your friend Naruto wasn't the first arrival, just the most powerful they've detected. Lance's eyes flickered to Kurama briefly. There have been others, though most apparently didn't survive the crossing. The implications sent a chill down Cynthia's spine. Are they still attempting to open portals? Not actively, with their leadership in custody. However, Lance hesitated, uncharacteristic for the typically decisive Dragon Master. We're detecting increased psychic anomalies across regions. Particularly strong readings in Kanto, centered around Saffron City. Sabrina's territory, Cynthia murmured, mind already calculating. The powerful psychic gym leader had always been sensitive to dimensional fluctuations. Has she reported anything? That's just it. Communication with Saffron City has become erratic. Reports of residents experiencing shared dreams, psychic Pokémon behaving erratically. Lance's expression darkened. Sabrina sent one message about resonance with foreign energy patterns before her communications ceased entirely. Cynthia's gaze moved to the sealed dimensional portal symbol she'd carefully transcribed from Spear Pillar. Naruto's seals might be affecting psychic wavelengths across our world. If Sabrina's picking that up, we need information more than action at this point, Lance conceded. Your expertise in dimensional phenomena makes you the logical choice for investigation, but given recent events, you're worried about my objectivity. Cynthia finished for him, a hint of steel entering her voice. Because I worked with Naruto. Lance met her eyes directly. 6 legendary Pokémon chose to follow him, Cynthia. That level of influence has never been documented. We need to understand it, not just accept it. Before she could form a suitably diplomatic response, Kurama rose and padded to the communication screen. The nine-tailed fox studied Lance for a moment before deliberately turning to the table where Cynthia had assembled potential transport routes to Kanto. The message couldn't have been clearer if the Pokémon had spoken aloud. It seems Kurama agrees we should investigate, Cynthia said, unable to completely suppress a smile at the fox's obvious intelligence. We'll depart for Saffron City immediately and report what we find. Lance nodded, professional as always despite the unusual situation. Keep secure communication protocols active. If these disturbances are related to dimensional weaknesses, we can't rule out further Team Eclipse involvement despite the arrests. The call ended, leaving Cynthia alone with Kurama and the weight of unspoken concerns. She had been careful in her official reports, describing Naruto as an unusually gifted trainer with a special affinity for legendary Pokémon, omitting the more fantastical elements of chakra manipulation and his cross-dimensional origin. Even with her champion status, there were aspects of their encounter that would strain credibility. You understand more than you let on, she said to Kurama, who was now pawing at her map of Kanto with deliberate precision. About all of this, the fox Pokémon met her eyes with an expression too complex to be anything but sentient communication. One tail tapped the transcribed seal pattern, then pointed toward Saffron City on the map, a connection between the seal and the psychic disturbances. Cynthia interpreted, academic excitement rising despite her fatigue. Of course, if Naruto's energy has a psychic component, Sabrina would be among the first to detect it. Kurama made a sound that somehow conveyed partial agreement, close, but not quite correct. Cynthia gathered her research materials methodically, mind already forming hypotheses. We'll take the magnet train connection through Johto. Less conspicuous than flying directly. As she packed, her gaze fell on the small collection of photographs on her desk, monuments to a career spent pursuing knowledge of ancient powers and legendary Pokémon. Years of meticulous research, careful documentation, proven methodologies. And in less than a day, a whiskered stranger with impossible abilities had upended everything she thought she understood about the fundamental nature of their world. You know, she said to Kurama as she secured her final notes. In all my research into legendary Pokémon, I never imagined actually traveling with one. Let alone, she trailed off, gesturing vaguely at the nine-tailed foe, who was demonstrating intelligence and awareness far beyond even the most exceptionally trained Pokémon. Kurama responded with what could only be described as a smirk, tails swishing with something resembling amusement. The journey to Kanto would take most of a day, even using the high-speed rail connections. Time enough to organize her thoughts and prepare for whatever awaited them in Saffron City. And perhaps time to address the question that had lingered in her mind since Naruto's departure through the dimensional portal. Why had his absence left such a distinct feeling of loss when she had known him for less than a day? The magnet train hummed smoothly as it glided over the track connecting Johto and Kanto, the countryside blurring into streaks of green and blue outside the window. Cynthia had secured a private compartment, her champion status offering certain privileges, though she'd foregone the usual formal notification to maintain a lower profile. Kurama lay across the opposite seat, nine tails neatly arranged, eyes closed but ears twitching at every sound. The fox Pokémon had drawn considerable attention at the station despite Cynthia's attempt at discretion. T-tailed Nanette's variants were rare but not unheard of, yet something about Kurama's presence seemed to unsettle other Pokémon, who gave them a wide berth. Cynthia's Pokech chimed softly with an incoming message, Professor Rowan, responding to her discreet inquiry about psychic resonance patterns. Dimensional stability affects psychic wavelengths first, the message read. Ancient text sug. Est sensitives experience. Echoes. When barriers thin. Exercise caution with empathic exposure. Traditional protective methods likely ineffective against non-native energies. Not particularly reassuring, but consistent with her own research. Sabrina wasn't just a powerful psychic trainer, she herself possessed psychic capabilities beyond most humans. If Naruto's sealing technique was creating ripples across dimensions, she would be particularly vulnerable to its effects. The train's announcement system indicated they were approaching Saffron City, though something about the automated voice sounded subtly wrong, a barely perceptible distortion in the cadence. Cynthia wasn't the only one who noticed. Kurama's eyes snapped open, pupils narrowing to slits. You sense it too, Cynthia murmured, recalling Lance's report of communication anomalies. Something's affecting electronic transmissions. As the train decelerated into Saffron Station, the first visible signs of disturbance became apparent. The platform was unusually empty for mid-afternoon, with only a handful of passengers disembarking. Station staff moved with mechanical precision, their expressions blank and movements synchronized in a manner that sent a chill down Cynthia's spine. Welcome to Saffron City, intoned a blue uniformed attendant as Cynthia stepped onto the platform, Kurama alert at her side. Please proceed directly to your destination. Minimize unnecessary communication. The gym leader requests compliance with telepathic harmony protocols. Telepathic harmony protocols, Cynthia repeated, her Archer's instinct immediately cataloging the abnormal terminology. I don't believe I'm familiar with those. The attendant's eyes remained unfocused, staring slightly above Cynthia's head. Recent PSY chic wavelength adjustments require synchronized thought patterns. The gym leader provides guidance. Please proceed to your destination. Kurama growled softly, tails bristling with obvious displeasure at the attendant's response. The fox moved slightly ahead of Cynthia, posture protective. We'll proceed to the gym, Cynthia decided, keeping her voice calm despite the clear signs that something was very wrong in Saffron City. Thank you for your assistance. Outside the station, the wrongness intensified. Saffron City was Kanto's largest metropolitan center, typically bustling with activity at all hours. Now the streets stood nearly empty, the few visible residents moving with the same eerie synchronization as the station staff. Even the ambient sounds seemed muted, as if the entire city were underwater. This is beyond simple psychic influence, Cynthia murmured to Kurama as they made their way toward the distinctive building housing Saffron Gym. Mass coordination at this scale would require tremendous power and control. The fox Pokémon made a sound of agreement, Ninetales now fully alert, each moving independently as if tracking different energy signatures. They had reversed 3 blocks when Kurama suddenly froze, ears swiveling toward a narrow alley between buildings. Before Cynthia could question the reaction, the fox darted into the shadows with surprising speed. Kurama, wait, Cynthia called, hurrying after the legendary Pokémon. The alley twisted unexpectedly, opening into a small courtyard hidden between Saffron's towering buildings. There, Kurama Street, tensed before a figure who leaned casually against a wall, arms crossed. Thought I sensed something familiar, the stranger said, pushing away from the wall to stand upright. Didn't expect to see you without your trainer, though. The young man appeared to be in his early 20s, with dark hair styled in spikes at the back and intense eyes that regarded Kurama with cold calculation. He wore a high-collared dark blue shirt and carried himself with the fluid readiness of someone accustomed to combat. Kurama's reaction was immediate and startling. All 9 tails flared with elemental energy. And a sound emerged from the fox that was unlike any Pokémon cry Cynthia had ever heard. It contained layers of meaning, emotional context that transcended language barriers. The stranger's eyes widened slightly. So you recognize me, even in this world. Interesting. Cynthia stepped forward, positioning herself beside Kurama. Who are you? Someone who shouldn't be here, the young man replied cryptically. Just like that fox isn't really a Nettles, and whatever's happening in this city isn't natural psychic influence. His eyes narrowed. Where is he? The question carried unmistakable intensity. And Cynthia didn't need clarification on who he referred to. This stranger knew Naruto, and based on Kurama's reaction, not as a friend. Dealing with the dimensional rift from the other side, she answered carefully. Assessing the newcomer, if he was from Naruto's world as she suspected, his capabilities might be equally unpredictable. The stranger made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it contained no warmth. Always cleaning up messes, isn't he? Some things don't change across dimensions. Before Cynthia could respond, a wave of psychic pressure swept through the courtyard. So intense it momentarily distorted her vision. The stranger tensed, hand moving to his belt where 6 Pokeballs were secured. That's getting worse, he muttered. The psychic feedback loop is approaching critical threshold. You know what's causing it? Cynthia asked, professional interest temporarily overriding caution. The stranger studied her with renewed interest. You're not just his companion. You're a researcher of some kind. Cynthia Sharona, Sinnoh champion and specialist in dimensional phenomena. Something like respect flickered across his features. Sasuke Uchiha. And yes, I know what's causing it because I've been tracking the pattern for weeks. The gym leader with psychic abilities has been amplifying a signal that's bleeding through from our world. Probably through the seal Naruto created. The casual confirmation of her theory, and the mention of Naruto's name, cemented Cynthia's suspicion that Sasuke was another dimensional traveler. The seal was meant to close the portal, she said, brow furrowing in concentration. To prevent instability. It did, Sasuke confirmed, but energy still resonates between connection points. You're psychic. Feels it like a song she can't get out of her head, and she's unconsciously broadcasting it to everyone connected to her mental network. His expression darkened, which apparently now includes most of this city. Another wave of psychic pressure washed over them, stronger than the first. Kurama growled, tails lashing with increasing agitation. It's accelerating, Sasuke observed, straightening with sudden urgency. We need to reach the source before. The rest of his sentence was drowned out by a psychic scream that tore through the mental fabric of Saffron City. Cynthia clutched her head, momentarily overwhelmed by the telepathic backlash. When her vision cleared, Sasuke was already moving toward the gym with determined strides. Wait, she called, hurrying after him with Kurama at her heels. What happens when it reaches critical threshold? Sasuke didn't slow his pace. Best case, every psychic Pokémon in the city goes berserk simultaneously. Worst case, the resonance creates a feedback loop that reopens the dimensional tear, but without proper stabilization. The implications didn't need elaboration. They had witnessed at Spear Pillar what an uncontrolled dimensional rift could unleash. You've been monitoring this situation, Cynthia said as they navigated through increasingly disoriented citizens who now moved with spasmodic jerks rather than smooth synchronization. Why not intervene earlier? I'm not here to save your world, Sasuke replied coldly. I'm here to find a way back to mine. But if that seal destabilizes completely, he left the consequence unstated. But his meaning was clear. All paths home would be jeopardized. They reached the imposing structure of Saffron Gym as another psychic wave pulsed outward from its center. The building itself seemed to shimmer, reality bending slightly around its edges. 2 black uniformed gym trainers stood at the entrance, eyes glowing with unnatural purple light. The gym leader is not accepting challenges at this time. They intoned in perfect unison. Please return to your residences and maintain telepathic harmony. Sasuke's response was immediate and decisive. His eyes shifted, irises bleeding. G to red with strange black patterns swirling within them. Sleep, he commanded simply. The guard's eyes rolled back, and they collapsed to the ground in perfect synchronization. What did you? Cynthia began, startled by the casual display of power. Genjutsu. Sasuke cut her off. They're unharmed, just unconscious. Let's move. Inside, the gym's traditional maze-like structure had been altered. Walls that normally created a labyrinth of teleportation pads and challenger trials had been reconfigured into a spiral pattern leading inward. Psychic-type Pokémon, Kadabra, Espeon, Mr. Mime, Flow, aided in meditative poses at regular intervals, their eyes glowing with the same purple light as the guards. Their amplifiers, Sasuke observed, moving cautiously through the spiral, extending her range throughout the city. At the center of the spiral, the battlefield had been transformed. Floating several feet above the platform where Sabrina would normally accept challenges, the gym leader herself hovered in lotus position. Her long dark hair whipped around her face as if caught in an invisible wind, eyes wide open but seeing nothing, glowing with intense psychic energy. Above her, a swirling vortex of psychic power had taken form, its center exhibiting the same dimensional distortion patterns they had witnessed at the portal site. The resonance is creating a focal point, Cynthia realized aloud. She's unconsciously trying to harmonize with the frequency from the other side. Surrounding Sabrina in protective formation were her most powerful Pokémon, Alakazam, Gallade, Gothitelle, and at the forefront, a particularly formidable Metagross whose cross-shaped face was marked with glowing purple patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the vortex. The Metagross is the primary conductor, Sasuke said, eyes narrowing as he analyzed the situation. Its 4 brains are processing and amplifying the signal. We need to disrupt its connection first. Cynthia reached for Garchomp's Pokeball, but Kurama moved before she could release her partner. The 9-tailed fox leapt forward into the open space, tails spreading in a fan pattern as he released a haunting cry that cut through the psychic humming. The effect was immediate. Every psychic Pokémon in the room turned toward Kurama, their synchronized movements faltering. Sabrina herself twitched, her levitation dropping several inches as her concentration wavered. It recognizes him, Sasuke murmured, watching intently. The chakra signature is familiar enough to disrupt the pattern. The Metagross recovered first, its 4 massive legs slamming into the ground as it positioned itself between Kurama and Sabrina. Its normally calculating red eyes now blazed purple, and the psychic energy surrounding it condensed into a psychic attack of extraordinary power. Kurama met the attack head-on, 9 tails forming a shield-like pattern that somehow absorbed the psychic energy rather than deflecting it. The fox's bod, why glowed with blue chakra, Naruto's energy, Cynthia realized, still resonating within his partner. Now, Sasuke said, stepping forward as he released a Pokémon of his own, a sleek, bipedal creature with razor-sharp claws and dark feathers that Cynthia recognized as an Alolan Persian. Disrupt the Metagross's concentration while I reach Sabrina. Cynthia deployed Garchomp and her Lucario simultaneously, immediately noting the strategic advantage of steel and fighting types against psychics. Lucario, Aura Sphere on Alakazam. Garchomp, Dragon Rush on Gallade. The battlefield erupted into coordinated chaos. Kurama and Metagross locked in a direct contest of power, the 9-tailed fox holding ground against a legendary Pokémon through sheer force of will and the lingering chakra connection to Naruto. Cynthia's Pokémon engaged the flanking psychics with precision born from years of championship battles. Sasuke and his Persian moved with extraordinary coordination, weaving between psyche attacks with such fluid grace that they almost appeared to teleport. The Persian's dark pulse created moments of psychic blindness that Sasuke exploited to advance toward Sabrina's floating form. Quote, her consciousness is trapped in the resonance loop, he called to Cynthia, dodging a Psybeam from Gothitelle. I need a direct line to break the connection. Understanding immediately, Cynthia changed tactics. Garchomp, sandstorm cover. Her partner roared, summoning a localized sandstorm that filled the central arena, obscuring visual targeting for the psychic Pokémon who relied heavily on sight for their attacks. In the momentary confusion, Sasuke made his move. With a burst of speed that rivaled Naruto's, he leapt upward, red eyes fixed on Sabrina. His hand reached out, fingers spread as if to grasp something invisible. Sharingan. Mental disruption. he intoned, his voice carrying an authority that seemed to ripple through the psychic field. For a heartbeat, everything stopped, the swirling vortex, the psychic Pokémon. Even the sandstorm particles hung suspended in the air. Then reality reasserted itself with a thunderous psychic backlash that knocked everyone except Sasuke and Kurama to the ground. Sabrina fell from her levitation, body suddenly limp as the psychic energy dispersed. Sasuke caught her before she hit the platform, lowering her carefully to a seated position as her eyes fluttered. The purple glow fading to reveal natural iris color. "The void," she whispered, voice hoarse as if she'd been screaming for hours. It was singing, calling, so many voices. Kurama approached cautiously as the Metagross shuddered, its systems rebooting as the psychic influence faded. The fox studied Sabrina intently before turning to Sasuke with a look that somehow managed to combine suspicion and reluctant gratitude. "I didn't do it for you," Sasuke told the Pokémon flatly, though the exchange only reinforced the impression that they shared history beyond this encounter. Cynthia moved to Sabrina's side, offering a water bottle from her pack. The gym leader accepted it with trembling hands, her normally composed features haggard with exhaustion. "Champion Cynthia," she managed after several sips, recognition dawning in her eyes. "You came because of the disturbances." "Yes, though I didn't expect to find the entire city under psychic influence," Cynthia replied gently. "What do you remember?" Sabrina's gaze unfocused slightly. "It started 3 days ago. A new frequency in the psychic wavelength, beautiful but alien. I was studying it, trying to understand its pattern, and then..." She shook her head. "It's fragmented after that. The more I listened, the more it seemed to listen back." "Chakra resonance," Sasuke supplied, standing with arms crossed. "Your psychic abilities acted as a receiver for energy bleeding through from the dimensional seal." Sabrina's attention shifted to him, eyes narrowing as she sensed something unusual. "You're like the energy. Not from here." Before Sasuke could respond, the Metagross let out a mechanical bellow, its massive body shuddering as psychic energy continued to pulse erratically from its core. The Pokémon's legs buckled, sending tremors through the gym floor. "It's destabilizing," Sabrina gasped, attempting to stand despite her weakness. "The connection was too deep. It can't regulate the energy flow." Kurama moved with decisive purpose, positioning himself directly before the distressed Metagross. The fox's 9 tails spread wide, each glowing with different elemental energy, before touching the steel Pokémon's body at precise points. "What is it doing?" Sabrina asked, watching with professional fascination despite the crisis. "Energy redistribution," Sasuke answered, his sherry non-eyes tracking patterns invisible to normal sight. "The fox is drawing out the excess chakra and converting it to elemental energy it can process." The technique appeared to be working. Metagross's shuddering gradually subsided, its eyes returning to their natural red glow. But as the immediate crisis with Sabrina's Pokémon abated, Cynthia noticed a new problem developing. Throughout the gym, the psychic Pokémon that had been serving as amplifiers were beginning to stir, their synchronized movements replaced by erratic, agitated behavior. An Espeon's forked tail lashed violently as it fired swift attacks at random. A group of Kadabra teleported in disorienting patterns, appearing and disappearing with increasing speed. "The network is collapsing," Sabrina realized, face paling. Without the coordinating signal, they're experiencing psychic withdrawal. And it's not just here, it's throughout the city. Cynthia's mind raced through the implications. An entire city of psychically influenced citizens and Pokémon suddenly experiencing withdrawal simultaneously could quickly escalate to mass panic or worse. "We need a replacement signal," she said, turning to Sabrina. "Something armless but recognizable to transition them gradually." The gym leader nodded weakly. "I could generate a calming wavelength, but not at sufficient strength to reach the entire network. Not in my current state. I can amplify it," Sasuke offered unexpectedly, earning surprised looks from both women. He shrugged at their expressions. "Dimensional instability affects my objectives too. I have techniques that can boost psychic projection." Kurama, having successfully stabilized Metagross, padded over to them. The fox seemed to consider something for a moment before sitting directly in front of Sabrina, 9 tails forming a semicircle behind its body. "I think," Cynthia said slowly, observing Kurama's deliberate positioning, "he's offering to help as well." Sabrina studied the nine-tailed fox with growing understanding. The foreign energy I've been sensing, it's connected to this Pokémon, isn't it? Not actually in the nettles, despite appearances. His name is Kurama, Cynthia said. And yes, the energy you detected is called chakra. It's not from our world. Accepting this extraordinary information with the adaptability of someone accustomed to psychic phenomena, Sabrina nodded. Dead and placed her hands on either side of Kurama's face. If you're offering your energy to stabilize mine, I accept. What followed was unlike anything Cynthia had witnessed, even after the remarkable events at Spear Pillar. Sasuke positioned himself behind Sabrina, hands forming complex signs before coming to rest on her shoulders. His red eyes intensified, the black pattern spinning slowly. Kurama's 9 tails rose higher, each tip glowing with blue-tinged chakra that flowed visibly into Sabrina's hands. The gym leader's eyes closed in concentration, her expression shifting from strain to something approaching wonder. The pattern, she whispered. I see it now. Not invasive, conversational. It wasn't trying to overwhelm, just connect. A gentle psychic wave began emanating from their connected triangle, expanding outward in concentric rings. Unlike the chaotic pulses from before, this energy carried a soothing quality, like mental background noise resolving into harmonious music. Throughout the gym, the agitated psychic Pokémon gradually calmed, their erratic movements slowing to normal patterns. Metagross straightened fully, its massive body stabilizing as it processed the new psychic frequency. It's working, Cynthia observed, watching the wave expand beyond the gym walls to encompass more of the city. You're resetting the network. More than that, Sabrina replied, voice distant as if speaking from within a trance. I'm understanding the original signal now. It contains memories, emotions, fragments of another world. Sasuke's expression tightened. Don't look too deeply. Some memories aren't meant to be shared. Whether Sabrina heeded his warning was unclear, but after several more minutes, the psychic wave had expanded to cover all of Saffron City. Reports began coming in through the gym's communication system, citizens awakening from what they described as a shared dream state, psychic Pokémon returning to normal behavior patterns, systems resuming standard functions. Finally, Sabrina opened her eyes and withdrew her hands from Kurama. The fox remained seated, regarding her with what appeared to be newfound respect. Thank you, she said simply to both Kurama and Sasuke. That was extraordinary. Sasuke stepped back, his eyes returning to their normal dark state. The resonance has been neutralized, but the underlying connection remains. Your psychic sensitivity made you particularly vulnerable to the bleed-through effect. Which raises the question, Cynthia interjected, of why this happened specifically in Saffron City. When the dimensional seal is located at Spear Pillar in Sinnoh. Not just here, Sasuke corrected. This was simply the strongest manifestation. I've tracked similar, smaller resonance patterns across regions, particularly in locations with strong psychic activity or legendary Pokémon sightings. Sabrina rose carefully to her feet, still unsteady but quickly regaining her composure. Her professional demeanor reasserted itself as she surveyed her gym and Pokémon. If what you're saying is true, we're experiencing some form of dimensional harmonization. Our world adjusting to energy patterns from another. Precisely, Cynthia agreed, academic excitement momentarily overtaking concern. Which suggests the seal Naruto created isn't just a closed door, it's more like a membrane, permeable to certain energy frequencies. Kurama made a sound that clearly indicated agreement, tails swishing with obvious interest in the conversation. The fox's intelligence continued to impress Cynthia, not simply following the discussion but actively engaging with it. Naruto, Sabrina repeated, testing the unfamiliar name. The source of the original energy signature. Another visitor like, she glanced at Sasuke, leaving the comparison unspoken. Yes, Cynthia confirmed, though he returned to his world to properly seal the dimensional rift from that side. Leaving his fox behind, Sabrina noted, studying Kurama with renewed interest. A significant sacrifice, suggesting he intends to return. Sasuke made a sound that might have been amusement. He's stubborn that way, always keeps his promises, even across dimensions. The comment revealed layers of history between Sasuke and Naruto that Cynthia found increasingly intriguing. Their relationship seemed complex, not quite friendship, not quite rivalry, but something deeper that transcended easy categorization. You know him well, she observed. Sasuke's expression closed slightly. In another life. He turned to Sabrina, changing the subject. You should establish psychic dampers around the gym. Now that you're aware of the resonance pattern, you can create filters to prevent future overwhelm. The gym leader nodded. Professional interest clearly peaked despite her recent ordeal. I'll need to document the frequency patterns while they're still fresh in my mind. This represents an entirely new category of psychic phenomenon. As Sabrina moved to her research equipment, Cynthia approached Sasuke with measured steps. You've been tracking these resonance patterns systematically. Looking for a way back. Looking for answers, he corrected. Though he didn't deny her assessment. Our arrival here wasn't random, despite appearances. There are connections between our worlds that predate recent breaches. The statement aligned with symbols Cynthia had discovered in her own research, ancient carvings that matched nothing in known archaeological records but bore striking similarities to the sealing patterns Naruto had created. You should show me what you've found, she suggested. Compare notes. If there are historical connections between dimensions, documenting them properly could benefit both our research efforts. Sasuke considered her for a long moment, his calculating gaze reminding her that despite his helpful intervention, his priorities remained his own. Perhaps, when Saffron has fully stabilized. Before Cynthia could press further, Kurama approached Sabrina's workstation, observing as the gym leader documented the psychic patterns she had experienced. The fox's attention seemed particularly focused on a visualization of energy wavelengths displayed on her monitor. Fascinating, Sabrina murmured, noticing Kurama's interest. You recognize these patterns, don't you? They mean something specific to you. Kurama made a series of sounds, not typical Pokémon cries, but complex vocalizations with distinct patterns. Though incomprehensible to human ears, the deliberate cadence suggested language rather than animal communication. He's trying to tell you something, Cynthia realized, moving closer. Sabrina's eyes unfocused slightly, her psychic abilities reaching toward the fox. Not with words, but with impressions, images. Her brow furrowed in concentration. I'm seeing a village hidden among massive trees. A mountain with faces carved into it. And a boy with whisker marks, surrounded by swirling energy. Kurama nodded, tails moving in apparent approval of her interpretation. Konoha, Sasuke supplied, watching the exchange with guarded interest. Our village. Those are memories he's projecting. The casual confirmation that Sasuke and Naruto shared origins, came from the same village, added another piece to the puzzle Cynthia was assembling. Two-dimensional travelers from the same world, both possessing extraordinary abilities beyond this world's normal parameters, yet apparently pursuing different agendas since their arrival. The psychic resonance Saint have strengthened Kurama's ability to project mental images, Sabrina theorized, still focused on the fox. The lingering effects are enabling a form of telepathic communication that would normally be beyond even my abilities with Pokémon. As if to demonstrate, Kurama's eyes glowed briefly, and Sabrina gasped. The seal, she said, turning to Cynthia. He's showing me the seal pattern at Spear Pillar. But not as it appears now, as it's meant to be when complete. It's missing elements. Cynthia retrieved her notebook, quickly turning to the transcription she'd made. Missing elements. You mean it's unfinished, intentionally. Sasuke interjected, moving to examine the drawing. A two-part seal, designed to be completed from both sides of the dimensional barrier. Naruto created the framework, but the final bindings require synchronized application. The implications were significant, not just for theoretical understanding of dimensional mechanics, but for the practical question of Naruto's return. If the seal was deliberately designed with completion parameters that required synchronization, it suggested a planned method of controlled passage rather than permanent closure. He left a path back, Cynthia concluded, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from her voice. But it requires coordination from both sides. And specific timing, Sabrina added, still receiving impressions from Kurama. I'm seeing celestial alignments, cyclic patterns. The connection points strengthen at regular intervals. Sasuke's expression revealed nothing, but his attention had clearly sharpened. The fox is giving away quite a lot of information, he observed, a question implicit in his tone. Kurama met his gaze directly, Ninetales rising in what appeared to be deliberate challenge. Another series of complex vocalizations emerged from the fox, directed specifically at Sasuke. Though Cynthia couldn't understand the literal meaning, the emotional content was clear enough: determination, perhaps defiance, and absolute loyalty to someone absent. Sasuke held the fox's gaze for a long moment before inclining his head slightly, not quite submission, but acknowledgement of the message received. Always the diplomat, even without him here to translate. The exchange further cemented Cynthia's impression that Kurama was far more than a Pokémon partner, perhaps closer to an equal, with independent agency and decision-making capability that transcended traditional trainer-Pokémon relationships. If there are predictable intervals when the dimensional connection strengthens, Cynthia said. Returning to the practical implications, we could establish monitoring protocols at the seal site. Prepare for potential contact, or intrusion, Sasuke countered. We weren't the only ones interested in crossing dimensions. Our enemies have similar capabilities. The reminder of the corrupted creature that had attempted to emerge through the Team Eclipse portal sobered Cynthia. For every promising development in understanding dimensional travel, there remain significant risks to both worlds. All the more reason for coordinated research, she argued. Defensive preparations require accurate data. Sabrina, who had been continuing her analysis of the psychic resonance patterns, looked up suddenly. There's something else in these frequencies. A timestamp, for lack of better terminology. A scheduled pulse in the pattern. How soon? Sasuke demanded, instantly alert. Calculating based on current degradation rates. Sabrina manipulated her equipment with practiced precision. Approximately 17 days from now. The resonance will intensify significantly before collapsing into a momentary synchronization point. 17 days. Just over 2 weeks to prepare for what could be the first controlled contact between dimensions since Naruto's departure. The research potential alone was extraordinary, to say nothing of the personal implications for Kura, Ma and the other legendary Pokémon waiting at the seal site. We should return to Spear Pillar immediately, Cynthia decided, already mentally cataloging the equipment and expertise they would need. Establish proper monitoring systems. Document the seal's current state for comparison. I need to remain in Saffron temporarily, Sabrina interjected, her professional dedication evident despite her recent ordeal. To ensure the psychic network fully stabilizes and to implement protective measures against future resonance events. But I would appreciate regular updates on your findings. The implicit request to be included in future research was clear, and Cynthia found herself warming to the idea. Sabrina's psychic expertise would be invaluable, especially given her demonstrated sensitivity to the chakra resonance patterns. Of course, once we've established baseline monitoring protocols, your input would be extremely welcome. Cynthia turned to Sasuke, who had maintained his position of calculated observation. And you, will you continue your independent investigation, or would you consider joining our research efforts? It was a diplomatic invitation, but the underlying question was more pointed. Would he work with them to facilitate controlled dimensional contact, potentially including Naruto's return? Sasuke considered her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I'll provide certain information that may be relevant to your monitoring efforts, he finally said, neither accepting nor rejecting the broader invitation. My primary objectives remain my own. It wasn't the full collaboration Cynthia might have hoped for, but it represented progress. Any information about dimensional mechanics from someone who had experienced crossing firsthand would be valuable. A reasonable arrangement, she acknowledged. Perhaps we could begin by comparing your resonance tracking data with our seal documentation. As they moved to a conference area to exchange information, Cynthia noticed Kurama lingering near Sabrina, the fox's intelligent eyes focused on the psychic patterns still displayed on her monitors. There was something almost wistful in the Pokémon's pause. Ture, a rare moment of visible emotion from the typically composed nine-tailed fox. Understanding dawned gradually. The resonance patterns represented the closest thing to direct contact with Naruto T. Hat Kurama had experienced since their separation. The fox wasn't just interested in the technical data, he was connecting with an echo of his partner's energy. The realization added emotional weight to what had initially seemed a purely academic breakthrough. Beyond the scientific implications of dimensional resonance lay the personal significance for being separated by barriers between worlds. Sabrina seemed to sense this as well, her expression softening as she addressed Kurama directly. Would you like me to create a psychic impression of these patterns? Something you could feel, rather than just observe. The offer, to translate digital data into a form of psychic experience that the fox could more directly connect with, demonstrated a sensitivity Cynthia hadn't expected from the typically reserved gym leader. Kurama considered for a moment before nodding, Ninetales moving in a pattern that somehow conveyed dignified gratitude. As Sabrina began the careful process of psychic translation, Sasuke watched from across the room, his expression momentarily unguarded. Something like recognition flickered in his eyes, perhaps remembering bonds and connections from his own past. He always had that effect, Sasuke said quietly, more to himself than to Cynthia. Making connections that last beyond reason or distance. The comment offered a brief glimpse into the history between Sasuke and Naruto, suggesting a depth of relationship that had shaped both of them, for better or worse. Cynthia chose not to press for details, instead focusing on the practical exchange of info. Information that would advance their understanding of the dimensional phenomena. As Sasuke shared his carefully gathered data on resonance patterns across regions, she contributed her documentation of the sealing process and subsequent observations. What emerged was a more comprehensive picture than either had possessed individually, clear evidence of a systematic relationship between their worlds that extended beyond recent breaches. These patterns suggest regular contact points throughout history, Cynthia noted, identifying correlations between legendary Pokémon manifestations and chakra resonance spikes in Sasuke's data. Not just random tiers, but established pathways that have been activated periodically. Often corresponding with significant events in our world, Sasuke confirmed, indicating several timeline points. Major conflicts, power surges, forbidden techniques. The academic implications were fascinating, but the practical application was more immediately relevant. If dimensional contact followed predictable patterns, the upcoming resonance pulse represented their best opportunity to establish controlled communication. 17 days, Cynthia mused, mentally calculating preparation timelines. We'll need to coordinate resources carefully. Monitoring equipment, energy stabilization systems, communication protocols, and defensive measures, Sasuke added with characteristic pragmatism. Just because you're expecting Naruto doesn't mean he's all that might come through. The warning was valid, if sobering. Team Eclipse's reckless experiment had demonstrated the dangers of uncontrolled dimensional breaches. Even with more careful preparation, they couldn't predict with certainty what might attempt to exploit a momentary connection between worlds. As their technical discussion continued, Cynthia found her attention repeatedly drawn to Kurama and Sabrina. The gym leader had created a small sphere of psychic energy that pulsed with patterns matching the resonance data, which now hovered before Kurama. The fox sat in meditative stillness, tails occasionally moving in response to variations in the psychic impression. He's communicating through it, Sabrina explained when she noticed Cynthia's interest. Not just receiving, but projecting. Sending impressions back along the resonance frequency. The implications were startling. You mean he's potentially reaching Naruto on the other side. Even now, not directly, Sabrina clarified. More like leaving impressions that might be detected during moments of heightened awareness. Dreams, meditation, similar states where perception extends beyond normal boundaries. Kurama's efforts took on new significance with this understanding, not simply connecting with echoes of his partner's energy, but actively attempting to establish a form of contact, however tenuous. The fox's dedication reinforced something Cynthia had sensed from the beginning, the bond between Naruto and Kurama transcended conventional understanding of Pokémon trainer relationships. They were not merely compatible partners but somehow fundamentally connected, their separation an incomplete state that both sought to remedy. As evening fell over Saffron City, the immediate crisis had been resolved. Psychic stability had been restored throughout the urban center, with Sabrina's Pokémon implementing monitoring systems to prevent future overwhelm. Citizens resumed normal activities, many with only fragmented memories of their shared psychic experience. Sasuke prepared to depart, his contribution to the immediate situation complete. I'll continue monitoring resonance patterns and forward relevant data, he told Cynthia, his tone professional but not unfriendly. There are other sites I need to investigate before the synchronization point. Though curious about these other sites, Cynthia respected his independence. "We appreciate any information you're willing to share. And if you reconsider more direct collaboration, I know where to find you," he finished for her, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. At Spear Pillar, preparing a welcome committee. The characterization wasn't entirely inaccurate. Beneath the scientific justifications and research objectives lay a simpler truth. They were preparing for Naruto's potential return, creating the conditions necessary for his journey back to this world. As Sasuke turned to leave, Kurama approached him with deliberate steps. The two regarded each other with a complex mixture of wariness and recognition, beings from the same world, sharing knowledge and history that no one native to this dimension could fully comprehend. After a moment of silent communication, Kurama inclined his head slightly, not submission, but acknowledgement. Suk returned the gesture with equal gravity before addressing the fox directly. "Tell him when he returns that nothing is as simple as it appears," he said. "The connections between our worlds run deeper than either of us initially understood." With that cryptic message delivered, Sasuke departed, leaving Cynthia with the distinct impression that there were layers to this dimensional situation that remained unrevealed, histories and motivations that would only become clear with time. Sabrina approached, her recovery progressing but fatigue still evident in her movements. "I've arranged accommodations for you both," she said, indicating Cynthia and Kurama. "You should rest before traveling back to Sinnoh." "Thank you. It's been a long day for everyone." Cynthia turned to the gym leader with professional appreciation. "Your insights into the psychic resonance patterns have been invaluable. I hope you'll consider joining us at Spear Pillar when you've fully recovered." "I intend to," Sabrina confirmed, a hint of scholarly enthusiasm breaking through her typically reserved demeanor. "This represents an unprecedented opportunity to study cross-dimensional psychic phenomena. My expertise could be useful during the synchronization event." As they walked toward the guest quarters, Sabrina continued, "There's something else you should know. During my connection with the resonance, I perceived emotional imprints associated with the energy patterns, specifically directed toward you." Cynthia paused, surprised by this unexpected revelation. "Toward me? You mean from Naruto's consciousness?" "Precisely. Nothing concrete. Impressions rather than thoughts, but distinct. Curiosity, respect." Sabrina hesitated before adding, "Connection. His energy signature responds to your mention specifically." The information shouldn't have affected Cynthia as strongly as it did. Their interaction had been brief, less than a day from first meeting to dimensional separation. Yet Sabrina's words resonated with something she had felt but not fully acknowledged, a connection that had formed quickly but deeply, transcending the extraordinary circumstances of their encounter. "That's interesting," she managed, maintaining professional composure despite the unexpected personal dimension to their research. "Perhaps relevant to establishing contact parameters during the synchronization event." Sabrina's knowing look suggested she wasn't fooled by the academic deflection, but she didn't press further. "Rest well, champion. The coming days will require all our focus and expertise." Left alone with Kurama in the guest quarters, Cynthia allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The fox settled nearby, nine tails arranged neatly as he observed her with those intelligent, ancient eyes. 17 days, she said softly, more to herself than to Kurama. Barely enough time to prepare properly, but enough time to anticipate the potential reunion with someone who entered her life briefly yet significantly. Someone who had trusted her with his legendary partners and the continuation of research vital to both their worlds. Kurama made a soft sound, not the complex vocalization he had used with Sabrina, but a simple acknowledgement of shared understanding. The fox's expression conveyed something like approval, as if her thoughts were transparent to his perception. "I suppose we should both rest," Cynthia said, smiling slightly at the absurdity of maintaining conversational norms with a being she increasingly recognized as far more than a Pokémon. We returned to Sinnoh and begin preparations. As she settled into the provided accommodations, Cynthia's researcher's mind continued to process the day's discoveries. The psychic resonance patterns, the cyclic nature of dimensional contact points, the deliberate design of Naruto's seal to allow future passage, all fascinating academic puzzles with significant theoretical implications. Yet RLYING. These professional considerations ran a simpler current of thought. In 17 days, there existed the possibility of seeing Naruto again. Of continuing a conversation and connection that had been interrupted by dimensional necessity. Outside her window, Saffron City had returned to its normal rhythms, the psychic crisis resolved with minimal lasting impact. Citizens went about their evening activities, unaware of the broader implications of what had transpired, of worlds touching briefly, of beings from beyond their understanding walking among them. Kurama watched the city lights from his position near the window, Nine Tails occasionally twitching as if responding to energies only he could sense. In the fox's patient vigilance, Cynthia recognized a quality she had observed in Naruto as well. Determination that transcended ordinary persistence, a willingness to wait for as long as necessary to achieve reunion with what mattered most. 17 days until the dimensional synchronization point. Time enough to prepare scientifically, professionally, and perhaps, though she would scarcely admit it even to herself, personally for whatever might come through from the other side. For the first time since witnessing Naruto's departure through the dimensional portal, Cynthia felt something beyond academic interest or professional responsibility. Something closer to anticipation, to hope. Something worth preparing for, beyond the mere scientific opportunity. Morning in Saffron City brought clear skies and a palpable sense of normalcy that belied the previous day's psychic crisis. Citizens moved through streets and shops with no visible signs of their recent telepathic enthrallment, though Cynthia noticed occasional moments of confusion as individuals encountered gaps in their memory of recent days. Sabrina met them at the gym's entrance, her composed demeanor largely restored though subtle signs of fatigue remained visible around her eyes. She had prepared a data crystal containing complete documentation of the psychic resonance patterns for Cynthia's research. "I've included analytical notes on the frequency variations," the gym leader explained as she handed over the crystal. "There are recurring motifs that suggest intentional patterning rather than random energy dispersion." "Intentional?" Cynthia questioned, immediately intrigued. "You mean resonance itself might be directed consciously?" Sabrina nodded, her typically reserved expression warming slightly with scholarly enthusiasm. "The patterns demonstrate what I can only describe as conversational structure, call and response elements that evolve over time, as if the energy itself is attempting to establish communication protocols." The implication aligned with what they had observed of Kurama's reaction to the psychic impressions, not simply recognizing the energy but actively engaging with it, attempting to project back through the dimensional barrier. That would suggest Naruto is aware of the resonance from his side, Cynthia reasoned, excitement building at the research possibilities. Perhaps actively participating in its development. Or someone is, Sabrina cautioned. The patterns contain multiple distinct signatures, primary, secondary, and what appear to be background influences. The dimensional connection may involve more parties than we initially assumed. The warning tempered Cynthia's enthusiasm with necessary caution. Sasuke's presence in their world already confirmed that Naruto wasn't the only being capable of dimensional crossing. The possibility of other entities monitoring or influencing the connection couldn't be dismissed. As they completed final preparations for departure, Sabrina approached Kurama directly. The gym leader knelt to meet the fox's gaze at eye level. A gesture of respect that acknowledged his unique status beyond ordinary Pokémon. "I've prepared something that might help maintain your connection to the resonance patterns," she said, presenting a small crystal similar to but distinct from the research data she had given Cynthia. "It's imprinted with the psychic frequency signature, a reference point that should remain stable even as the patterns evolve." Kurama studied the offering with evident interest, Nine Tails swaying in a pattern that somehow conveyed gratitude without words. "I would like to understand more about your world. When circumstances permit," Sabrina continued, her professional curiosity evident but tempered with respect. "The psychic principles operating there appear fundamentally different from our own, yet compatible in unexpected ways." The nine-tailed fox made a sound of what seemed like agreement before carefully taking the crystal between his teeth, evidently accepting both the gift and the implicit request for future exchange of knowledge. As they prepared to board the train that would return them to Sinnoh, Sabrina addressed Cynthia one final time. "The synchronizati, on point in 17 days represents an unprecedented research opportunity, but also potential risk. Whatever preparations you're making at Spear Pillar, I would advise redundant containment protocols. Of course, Cynthia agreed. Professional caution overriding enthusiasm. We'll implement multiple security layers and energy dampening systems as contingencies. Sabrina nodded, satisfied with this response. I'll make arrangements to join you 3 days before the event, assuming Saffron remains stable. My psychic sensitivity could prove useful during the final approach to synchronization. With final arrangements confirmed, Cynthia and Kurama boarded the magnet train for the return journey. As the high-speed transport pulled away from the platform, Cynthia noticed Sabrina watching her departure with an expression that combined professional interest with something more personal, a connection formed through shared experience of extraordinary circumstances. The gym leader raised one hand in farewell, and Cynthia returned the gesture with newfound appreciation for Sabrina's resilience and adaptability in the face of unprecedented psychic phenomena. Once settled in their private compartment, Cynthia began reviewing Sabrina's data crystal on her specialized tablet. The visualizations of psychic resonance patterns were fascinating, complex waveforms that indeed demonstrated conversational structures, evolving over time in what appeared to be meaningful rather than random progressions. These really do look intentional, she murmured, more to herself than to Kurama. Like a form of communication using energy frequencies instead of words. The fox Pokémon had settled opposite her, the crystal Sabrina had gifted placed carefully on the seat beside him. At Cynthia's comment, Kurama's ears perked forward with interest, and he moved to observe her tablet screen more directly. Cynthia angled the display for better viewing. See these recursive patterns. They maintain or structural elements while introducing variations, almost like maintaining a central theme while exploring improvisational elements. Kurama made a sound of apparent agreement, one tail tapping the screen where a particularly complex pattern formed what resembled a spiral shape. Yes, that one appears frequently, Cynthia confirmed, noting the fox's specific interest. Sabrina labeled it a G nature motif, something like an identifying marker within the overall pattern. The observation sparked a connection in Cynthia's mind, similar to the spiral patterns in the Solician ruins inscriptions, and in Naruto's sealing techniques. Kurama nodded with obvious approval at this connection, his tail swishing with increased animation. One paw reached for the crystal Sabrina had given him, nudging it toward Cynthia in what seemed a deliberate gesture. Understanding the implicit request, Cynthia carefully lifted the crystal. Unlike the data storage device containing Sabrina's research, this crystal pulsed with subtle energy, psychic impressions captured and stabilized through the gym leader's unique abilities. She called this a reference point, Cynthia recalled. Something to help maintain your connection to the resonance patterns. As she held the crystal near her tablet, something unexpected happened. The visualization on screen shifted, new patterns emerging that synchrony Z with subtle pulses from the crystal itself. The resonance data was responding to the psychic reference point, revealing layers of information not visible in the standard analysis. Remarkable, Cynthia breathed, academic excitement momentarily overwhelming everything else. The patterns are adaptive, responding to the presence of compatible energy signatures. Kurama watched intently, ILS now fully alert as the visualization continued to evolve. Within the shifting patterns, certain elements stabilized into recognizable structures, the spiral motif becoming more pronounced, joined by other recurring elements that resembled the hand signs Naruto had used when performing his techniques. It really is a form of communication, Cynthia realized, watching the patterns respond to Kurama's focused attention. And you're participating in the conversation. The fox Pokémon made a sound of confirmation, his intelligent eyes never leaving the synchronized display. There was purpose in his attention, not mere observation, but active engagement with the evolving patterns. Can you influence it deliberately? Cynthia asked, scientific curiosity fully engaged. Direct the pattern development. In response, Kurama closed his eyes briefly in concentration. The tips of his 9 tails began to glow with subtle blue energy, the same chakra signature Cynthia had observed during his interactions with Naruto. As this energy manifested, the patterns on screen shifted more dramatically, reorganizing around a central motif that resembled a stylized fox with 9 tails. You're imprinting your own signature on the resonance. Cynthia observed with growing excitement, creating a recognizable pattern that might be detected from the other side. Kurama opened his eyes, meeting Cynthia's gaze with what could only be described as satisfaction. The fox had demonstrated not just recognition of the resonance patterns but the ability to actively participate in their development, to send specific, identifiable signals through the dimensional barrier. The research implications were extraordinary. If Kurama could influence the resonance deliberately, it suggested the possibility of establishing rudimentary communication protocols prior to the synchronization event, preparing the way for more complex interaction when the dimensional barrier temporarily thinned. "This changes our approach significantly," Cynthia said, mind racing with new possibilities. "We need to document your signature pattern and establish monitoring systems capable of detecting responses specifically keyed to it." As the train continued its journey back toward Sinnoh, Cynthia and Kurama worked together with surprising synchronicity, the champion providing technical analysis and documentation while the entailed fox demonstrated increasingly precise control over his energy imprints within the resonance patterns. What emerged was a primitive but functional communication system, a series of distinct chakra signatures that could potentially be recognized and responded to from the other side of the dimensional barrier. If Naruto is monitoring the resonance as Sabrina suggested, Cynthia hypothesized, he might detect your specific signatures and respond with his own. We could establish basic confirmation protocols before the synchronization event. Kurama made a sound of agreement, Nine-Tail's settling into a more relaxed position as they completed the initial framework of their communication system. The fox appeared satisfied with their progress, though his attentive gaze suggested continued mental engagement with the possibilities they had uncovered. As the train approached the Johto border, Cynthia's Pokech chimed with an incoming message, Lance, requesting an update on the Saffron situation. After providing a concise summary of events and their resolution, Cynthia added, "We've identified a potential communication channel through the dimensional resonance. Request specialize. Monitoring equipment be delivered to Spear Pillar site for installation prior to synchronization event." Lance's response was immediate and supportive. "Approved. Equipment will be delivered within 48 hours. Professor Oak has expressed interest in consulting on this development." Except, Cynthia glanced at Kurama, who inclined his head in what appeared to be approval of the suggested collaboration. Confirmed. Oak's expertise would be valuable, particularly regarding interspecies communication protocols. With arrangements in place for their return to Spear Pillar, Cynthia allowed herself a moment of reflection. In just over 2 weeks, they would potentially witness the first controlled contact between dimensions since Naruto's departure. The scientific significance was profound, but so too was the personal dimension, the possibility of reunion between beings separated by barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. Kurama had settled into a meditative pose, the crystal from Saber Ina glowing softly beside him as he maintained his connection to the resonance patterns. In the fox's patient vigilance, Cynthia recognized a quality that transcended ordinary Pokémon behavior, a purposeful waiting, driven by bonds that stretched across dimensions. As the landscape outside transformed from Johto's rolling hills to the approaching mountains of Sinnoh, Cynthia found herself sharing that sense of purposeful anticipation. Beyond the academic excitement of unprecedented research lay the simpler human experience of looking forward to seeing someone again, someone who had entered her life briefly yet significantly. 17 days had become 16. The countdown to dimensional synchronization had begun. Chapter 2 End Chapter 3, Dragon's Keeper. Meteor Falls loomed against the Hoenn sky, its ancient stone edifice weathered by millennia of cosmic bombardment. Water cascaded through caverns formed when the world was young, carrying stardust particles that glittered beneath the surface like captive constellations. Here, where heaven had repeatedly touched earth, the boundary between terrestrial and celestial blurred into sublime ambiguity. Cynthia stood at the entrance, platinum hair whipping in the mountain wind as she consulted the dimensional resonance scanner Professor Oak had modified for their expedition. Kurama sat nearby, Nine-Tails fanned in a meditative aura. Why that had become his standard position when sensing distant energies. "The readings are stronger here," she noted, studying the pulsing patterns on her device. Just as Sasuke's data suggested. Even days had passed since their encounter in Saffron City. 11 days of intensive preparation at Spear Pillar, establishing monitoring systems and communication protocols in anticipation of the approaching synchronization event. Yet despite their progress, critical questions remained unanswered, questions that had led them to this remote corner of Hoenn. Ancient texts reference star visitors. At this site, Cynthia continued. Retrieving a weathered journal from her pack, Professor Cosmo's research team documented unusual energy signatures in meteorite samples that match certain frequencies in our dimensional resonance patterns. Kurama's ears perked forward with interest, though his eyes remained closed in concentration. The fox had grown increasingly proficient at manipulating chalk raw to interact with the resonance, sending complex signals through the dimensional barrier and detecting faint responses that suggested someone on the other side was indeed listening. If meteors brought material from other dimensions, Cynthia theorized, it might explain the concentration of detection points in this region. Cosmic impact is dimensional weakening. The hypothesis aligned with PATERNS they had identified across multiple sites, places where legendary Pokémon congregated, where ancient peoples had built temples, where dimensional energy fluctuated in measurable cycles. As they prepared to enter the cavern system, a warning growl rumbled from Kurama's throat. The fox rose to full alert, Ninetales bristling as his gaze fixed on the upper reaches of the cliff face. Cynthia followed his line of sight, hand instinctively moving toward Garchomp's Pokeball. At first, she saw nothing but weathered stone and cascading water, then a flash of movement caught her eye as a figure leapt between ledges with inhuman agility. We're being watched, she murmured, tracking the swift shadow that disappeared into a higher cavern entrance. Not Team Eclipse, their movement patterns are different. Kurama made a sound of agreement, his posture suggesting recognition rather than alarm. One tail pointed deliberately toward the sky, then back to the cavern where the figure had vanished. Dragon Clan, Cynthia interpreted, connecting the gesture to her research. Of course, Meteor Falls houses one of Hoenn's oldest dragon-worshipping communities. They've guarded these caverns for generations. This complicated their investigation. While Cynthia's champion status granted her access to most restricted areas, traditional dragon clans operated outside the League's jurisdiction, following ancient laws predating modern governance. We should proceed with respect, she decided, removing her hand from her Pokeball. Make our intentions clear. They entered the first chamber, W. Here sunlight filtered through crystalline formations to create prismatic patterns across limestone walls. The air carried a distinctive mineral scent, undercut by the perpetual music of falling water. Multiple passages branched from this central space, leading deeper into the mountain's secrets. Kurama paused, head tilting as if listening to something beyond human perception. After a moment, he selected a narrow tunnel to their left. Padding forward with confidence that suggested more than random choice. You sense something specific, Cynthia observed, following the fox's lead. A resonance point. The passage twisted downward, occasionally opening into chambers where ancient paintings decorated the walls, images of falling stars, of people communing with dragons, of light bridges connecting earth and sky. Cynthia paused occasionally to photograph these artifacts, her researcher's mind cataloging connections to similar iconography found at other dimensional hotspots. After 20 minutes of careful descent, they emerged into a vast underground cathedral. A circular pool dominated the center, its surface perfectly still despite water cascading into it from above. Surrounding Is natural font stood stone pillars carved with draconic symbols that glowed with faint bioluminescence. The dragon's sanctum, Cynthia breathed, recognizing the sacred site from academic descriptions. Few outsiders have documented this chamber. Standing at the pool's edge, back turned to them, was a young woman. Her wild dark hair was adorned with what appeared to be dragon teeth, and her Hey, patterned with scales in crimson and black, fluttered despite the still air of the cavern. Yet here you are, she said without turning, her voice echoing across the water's surface. The famous champion and her unusual companion. She pivoted slowly, revealing striking features, sharp eyes that held ancient wisdom at odds with her youthful appearance, skin darkened by constant exposure to the elements, and a posture that suggested coiled power ready to strike. I am Zinnia of the Draconid people, she announced, studying them with unconcealed suspicion. Lorekeeper and guardian of dragon history. You've come seeking knowledge of the sky passages. It wasn't a question but a statement of fact, delivered with absolute certainty. Yes, Cynthia confirmed, recognizing the value of directness with traditional knowledge keepers. We're researching dimensional boundaries, particularly where they intersect with legendary Pokémon activity. Zinnia's expression remained impassive, though. Her gaze lingered on Kurama with particular intensity. The nine-tailed one carries foreign energy. Not of this world, yet not entirely alien. Her eyes narrowed. Where is your other companion? The one who commands the Sky Lord. The question confirmed Cynthia's suspicion that they had been under observation since before their arrival, perhaps even tracked from the moment they entered Hoenn. More significantly, it revealed Zinnia's awareness of Rayquaza's connection to Naruto. He's currently in his home dimension, Cynthia answered carefully. Working to establish safe passage between worlds. Rayquaza chose to wait for his return. A flash of emotion, too swift to identify, crossed Zinnia's features before her composure returned. Rayquaza chooses no human master. For millennia, the Sky Lord has rejected all claims of ownership. Her voice hardened. Yet you expect me to believe it now follows this dimensional traveler. Kurama stepped forward, nine tails rising in what appeared to be deliberate display. The fox's eyes locked with Zinnia's in silent communication before he deliberately placed his paw on the scanner device Cynthia carried, activating the resonance visualization. Blue-tinged energy patterns materialized in the air between them, chakra signatures captured during their work at Spear Pillar, including the distinctive pattern associated with Rayquaza's bond to Naruto. Zinnia's eyes widened slightly as she studied the floating visualization. The ancient harmony, she whispered, recognition evident in her tone. Our oldest texts speak of it, energy that flows between being and beast. Human and dragon, earth and sky. Her gaze returned to Kurama with newfound intensity. You share this bond. The fox inclined his head in acknowledgement, one-tail jest. Erring toward the dimensional scanner and then to the sacred pool. Understanding the implicit request, Zinnia hesitated only briefly before nodding. You wish to test the waters. Few outsiders are granted such privilege, but she glanced again at the resonance patterns still hovering in the air. These are exceptional circumstances. She led them to the edge of the pool, where the waters surf. Ace reflected the cavern ceiling so perfectly it created the illusion of infinite space. The tears of the dragon, Zinnia explained, her tone shifting to that of a lorekeeper sharing sacred knowledge. Water that has passed through meteoric stone for thousands of years, absorbing cosmic memory. Our ancestors used it for vision-seeking, to glimpse beyond the veil of the immediate world. Cynthia approached respectfully, academic excitement balanced with appropriate reverence for the site's cultural significance. May I take readings? Non-invasive scans only. Zinnia considered the request before gesturing her assent. The waters will decide what they reveal. As Cynthia calibrated her equipment, Kurama moved to the pool's edge. The fox studied his reflection for a long moment before delicately touching one paw to the water's surface. Ripples expanded outward, distorting the mirror-like stillness into concentric rings that caught the bioluminescent light in hypnotic patterns. Immediately, Cynthia's scanner registered a dramatic shift in readings. The resonance frequency is amplifying, she reported, watching as the visualization transformed. The water is somehow enhancing the signal. Zinnia knelt beside Kurama, her initial suspicion gradually yielding to scholarly interest. The meteoric elements respond to your energy, recognizing it as kin to the star visitors. She aced a symbol in the air above the rippling water. Our oldest stories tell of beings who traveled the sky river between worlds, bringing knowledge and power. The dragons remember, even when human records fail. The scientific and mythological interpretations converged into tantalizing possibility. Meteor falls represented not just a place of celestial impact but a documented site of previous dimensional contact. Your people have recorded these visitations? Cynthia asked, careful to frame the question with appropriate respect for traditional knowledge. Zinnia's expression grew contemplative. Not as your scientists would recognize. Our records are memory songs, dragon whispers, stone tellings. She gestured to the cavern walls, where Cynthia now noticed subtle carvings almost indistinguishable from natural formations. The stories live in many forms. As they spoke, Kurama maintained his connection to the pool, nine tails moving in subtle patterns that corresponded to fluctuations in the resonance readings. The fox appeared to be using the water's amplification properties to send a more powerful signal through the dimensional barrier. He's reaching out, Cynthia realized, watching the data streams on her scanner. Using the meteoric elements to strengthen transmission. To the one who commands Rayquaza, Zinnia concluded, observation overcoming skepticism. Your companion on the other side of the Sky River. Quote, before Cynthia could respond, the pool's surface began to glow with subtle blue light, not reflected from above but emanating from within the water itself. N-centric ripples formed without physical cause, moving inward rather than outward in defiance of natural physics. Zinnia inhaled sharply. The waters respond. This has not happened in my lifetime. The convergent ripples met at the center of the pool, where the blue glow intensified into a small vortex of light. Within this illuminated spiral, an image began to form, indistinct at first, then solid. Eye-defying into a face they both recognized. Naruto, Cynthia whispered, leaning forward despite herself. The image wavered like a reflection on disturbed water, but remained recognizable, Naruto's face. Utter's concentrating in what appeared to be meditation, the whiskered markings on his cheeks more pronounced against skin illuminated by similar blue energy. Though the image was silent, his lips moved as if speaking. Remarkable, Cynthia breathed, quickly adjusting her scanner to record the phenomenon. A visual manifestation through the resonance. Not just visual, Zinnia countered, watching Kurama's reaction. The nine-tailed one hears something we cannot. Indeed, Kurama's attention was fixed on the watery image with absolute focus, ears swiveling to catch inaudible communication. Fox's tails moved in patterns that seemed responsive rather than initiative, replying to received information. A conversation across dimensions, Cynthia marveled, academic excitement momentarily overwhelming everything else. Using meteoric water as a conductive medium. The image lasted perhaps 30 seconds before the vortex collapsed, ripples dissipating as the blue glow faded back into the crystal clarity of the pool. Kurama sat back, expression conveying satisfaction despite the brevity of the contact. Zinnia studied the fox with newfound respect. Your bond transcends physical separation, she observed. As the oldest dragon songs claim as possible between true partners. The acknowledgement represented significant progress from her initial suspicion. Cynthia seized the opportunity to advance their primary objective. We came seeking information about dimensional boundaries and their connection to legendary Pokémon, she explained. Specifically, patterns that might help us establish safe passage during an upcoming synchronization event. Zinnia's expression grew serious once more. Why should I share such knowledge? The sky passages are not meant for casual transit. The balance between worlds is delicate. Quote, precisely why we seek proper understanding, Cynthia countered. Others with less respect for traditional boundaries have already attempted forced breaches. Team Eclipse's activities nearly caused catastrophic dimensional collapse at Spear Pillar. The mention of Team Eclipse triggered visible reaction, Zinnia's posture stiffening as her eyes narrowed dangerously. The Star Thieves. They came here 3 moons past, seeking dragon lore and meteoric samples. We drove them from our sacred sites, but they return like scavengers to abandoned kills. This new information aligned with patterns they had documented. Team Eclipse systematically targeting sites of dimensional significance despite their leadership's imprisonment following the Spear Pillar incident. They're continuing their research, Cynthia concluded grimly. Despite the demonstrated dangers. Worse, Zinnia said, moving to one of the carved pillars surrounding the pool. They seek specific knowledge. The dragon's ascension rite, a ceremony our ancestors performed to call upon Rayquaza in times of cosmic threat. She traced ancient symbols etched into the stone, patterns that bore a striking resemblance to elements of the dimensional seal at Spear Pillar. The rite opens a path between Earth and Sky Realm, allowing Rayquaza to traverse planes normally separate. Her finger followed a particular sequence of carvings. Our ancestors understood that certain boundaries exist for reason, that passages must be opened with proper preparation and closed with equal care. The parallels to their current situation were unmistakable. What Zinnia described as traditional ceremony aligned with their scientific understanding of dimensional mechanics, controlled openings requiring IFIC protocols to prevent destabilization. We're preparing for such a controlled opening, Cynthia explained. In 5 days, Dimensional resonance patterns suggest a natural synchronization point will occur at Spear Pillar. We believe it represents the safest opportunity for passage between worlds. Zinnia considered this information carefully, her role as lorekeeper evidently warring with traditional suspicion of outsiders. After a long moment, she reached a decision. I will show you the Ascension texts, she said finally. Not here. They reside in our most sacred repository, higher in the mountain. But first, her gaze moved deliberately to Kurama. I would know more of this bond with Rayquaza. Such connection to the Sky Lord is unprecedented in our records. Before Cynthia could formulate a diplomatic response, a low rumbling disturbed the cavern's tranquility. Dust drifted from the ceiling as the tremor intensified, water rippling across the sacred pool in chaotic patterns that disrupted its perfect reflection. Zinnia's expression transformed from contemplative to alarmed in an instant. Intruders, she hissed, moving with sudden urgency toward one of the chamber's exits. The outer barriers have been breached. Kurama was already in motion, Ninetails bristling with anticipatory energy as he took position near Cynthia. The fox's posture suggested he had sensed the disturbance even before the physical tremors manifested. Team Eclipse? Cynthia asked, releasing Garchomp with practiced efficiency. Yes, Zinnia confirmed, retrieving a Pokeball from beneath her cape. They've returned with excavation equipment, desecrating sacred stone to reach the upper repositories. She released her Pokémon, a Salamence whose midnight blue scales gleamed in the cavern's bioluminescent light. The dragon materialized with a roar that reverberated through the chamber, wings unfurling to their impressive span despite the confined space. We must reach the upper sanctum before they penetrate its defenses, Zinnia declared, leaping onto Salamence's back with the fluid grace of someone born to dragon riding. The knowledge they seek could destabilize more than our sacred sites if misused. Cynthia mounted Garchomp with matching efficiency, having battled alongside her partner for years. Lead the way, we'll provide support. Kurama, rather than joining either rider, darted toward a narrow passage that appeared to ascend through the rock face. The fox paused only briefly to ensure they noted his chosen route before disappearing into the tunnel with impressive speed. The nine-tailed one knows this mountain's paths without guidance, Zinnia observed with surprise. As if the stone speaks to him. He's sensitive to energy patterns, Cynthia explained as Garchomp launched into flight. Following Salamence toward a larger access tunnel, particularly those connected to dimensional boundaries. They ascended through a series of increasingly narrow chambers, the sound of mechanical drilling growing louder as they approached the surface. Zinnia's expression darkened with each sign of intrusion, scorch marks on ancient carvings, fallen stalactites, boot prints marring ceremonial spaces undisturbed for centuries. They defile consecrated ground, she said, voice tight with controlled fury. Ground that has held our people's connection to the dragon guardians since the first meteors fell. The violation transcended academic concern or even legal trespass. This was desecration of living cultural heritage, of knowledge preserved through millennia of careful stewardship. They emerged into a large upper chamber where sunlight pierced through a natural skylight, illuminating a disturbing scene. A team of black uniformed operatives, at least a dozen, had deployed heavy excavation equipment against the far wall. Drills and energy cutters worked methodically to remove a section of stone that, upon closer inspection, contained intricate carvings similar to those they had observed below. They're extracting the entire ritual sequence, Zinnia gasped, horror evident in her voice. Not just reading our lore, stealing it physically. At the Operati, on center stood a familiar figure, the silver-haired Team Eclipse leader, Drive Vega, supposedly imprisoned after the Spear Pillar incident. She directed the extraction with clinical precision, Periodi, Callie consulting a device that emitted scanning beams across the exposed carvings. Impossible, Cynthia murmured, shock momentarily overriding tactical assessment. International police confirmed her continued detention. Evidently their confirmation was premature, Zinnia replied grimly, directing Salamence to a concealed ledge where they could observe without immediate detection. Or perhaps what they hold is not what it appears. Quote, the implication was disturbing. Either a security breach of unprecedented scale or technology capable of creating convincing duplicates. Neither possibility dead well for containment of dimensional threats. As they formulated an intervention strategy, movement near the extraction site caught Cynthia's attention. Kurama had emerged from a narrow fissure, navigating the shadows with predatory stealth as he approached the Team Eclipse operation. The fox appeared to be conducting reconnaissance, Ninetales held unnaturally still to avoid detection as he assessed the situation. "Your companion shows wisdom," Zinnia acknowledged. "We should understand their full objective before engaging." Dr. Vega's voice carried across the chamber as she addressed her team. "Extraction at 60% completion. Prepare the dimensional frequency modulator for test activation once the sequence is secured." A technician approached with a pyramidal device similar to the one deployed at Spear Pillar. Though notably smaller and more refined in design, the modified resonator is calibrated to the meteorite samples, Director, the technician reported. "Simulati on suggests 93% probability of successful harmonic induction." "Excellent," Vega responded, her clinical tone belying the significance of what they attempted. "Once we have the complete ritual sequence, we can proceed with controlled testing. The Dragon's Path will provide the stable transit mechanism our previous attempts lacked." The exchange confirmed their worst fears. Team Eclipse was attempting to establish their own dimensional passage using dragon lore as a blueprint, circumventing the natural synchronization point they had been carefully preparing for its Spear Pillar. Kurama, having apparently gathered sufficient intelligence, retreated toward their position. The fox rejoined them with silent efficiency, communicating through deliberate gestures and expressions that somehow conveyed complex information: the number of operatives, the extraction timeline, the presence of specific technological threats. "They're nearly finished," Zinnia interpreted, watching as another section of carved stone was carefully removed and secured in a specialized container. "We must act now or lose our most sacred knowledge forever." Cynthia assessed their tactical options. Direct confrontation with a dozen armed operatives presented significant risk, particularly with irreplaceable cultural artifacts in the balance. Yet allowing Team Eclipse to complete their extraction was unacceptable on multiple levels. "We need a targeted intervention," she decided. "Disrupt their equipment and secure the extracted panels without endangering the remaining carvings." Zinnia nodded in agreement, her salamence tensing in anticipation of action. "I can create a diversion at the main entrance. The Dragon Oath compels them to respond to a direct challenge from a lorekeeper. Gar, Chomp and I will target their extraction equipment," Cynthia continued, formulating a coordinated strategy. "Disable their capability without risking the artifacts." Kurama's contribution came without verbal planning. The fox simply locked eyes with Cynthia, Ninetales rising in a pattern she had come to recognize as preparation for elemental manipulation. One tail pointed deliberately toward the pyramidal device, the dimensional resonator, identifying it as his primary target. Their roles established, they moved into position with practiced efficiency. Zinnia guided Salamence toward the chamber's main entrance, her posture transforming as she prepared to invoke her ceremonial authority. Cynthia and Garchomp circled to approach the extraction equipment from above, using the natural skylight as their insertion point. Kurama disappeared once more into shadow, his movements untraceable even to Cynthia's experienced eye. The synchronized attack began with Zinnia's powerful declaration, her voice carrying the weight of ancient tradition as she stood framed in the cavern entrance. "De Secrators," she thundered, her salamence roaring in harmonized outrage. "You violate the sacred covenant of dragon and stone." The dramatic entrance achieved its intended effect. Every operative turned toward the unexpected challenge, operations momentarily suspended as they assessed this new threat. Dr. Vega's reaction was immediate and cold. "Security team, engage the intruder. Extraction team, accelerate final sequence. Prepare for emergency transport of secured materials." As Team Eclipse security converged on Zinnia, Cynthia and Garchomp descended through the skylight. "Dragon rush on the drilling apparatus," she commanded quietly. "Precision targeting only." Garchomp executed the maneuver with surgical precision, her powerful form becoming a blur of focused energy that sheared through mechanical components without damaging the stone wall they threatened. The extraction equipment all lapsed in a cascade of sparks and hydraulic fluid, rendering it instantly inoperable. Simultaneously, Kurama made his move. The fox materialized beside the pyramidal resonator, Ninetales suddenly, flaring with different elemental energies: fire, electricity, ice, and others less easily categorized. Before the attending technician could react, Kurama unleashed a precise blast of combined energy directly into the device's control matrix. Unlike conventional attacks that might have destroyed the technology completely, this intervention appeared calibrated for specific disruption, targeting the resonance calibration systems while leaving the structural components intact. The resonator emitted a high-pitched whine before its activation lights faded to darkness, effectively neutralized without catastrophic failure. Dr. Vega's composed demeanor fractured as she witnessed the coordinated attack disabling her operation's key components. "Protect the extracted panels," she shouted, reaching for her own Pokeballs. "Deploy all combat units." The cavern erupted into controlled chaos as Team Eclipse released their Pokémon, predominantly dark and poison types selected for underground operations. Zinnia engaged multiple opponents simultaneously, her Salamence demonstrating battle coordination that spoke to years of partnership. Cynthia found herself confronting Drive Vega directly as Garcho MP intercepted 2 Drapion attempting to flank them. "You should still be in international police custody," Cynthia stated, studying the woman for any signs that might explain her improbable freedom. Vega smiled thinly. "Perhaps I am, champion. Reality is more malleable than your limited science acknowledges." She released her signature Pokémon, a Claydol whose ancient form rotated with unnatural precision. "Our understanding of dimensional mechanics has evolved significantly since our little encounter at Spear Pillar." The statement carried disturbing implications, but before Cynthia could pursue them, the Claydol attacked with a Psybeam of unusual coloration, standard psychic energy interlaced with something darker that reminded her of the corrupted dimensional energy they had encountered previously. Garchomp intercepted the attack with Dragon Claw, dispersing its energy but recoiling slightly at the contact. "Modified energy signature," Cynthia noted, concern mounting. "They're already implementing dimensional alterations to their Pokémon." Across the chamber, Zinnia had cleared a path to the storage containers holding the extracted panels. Her Salamence maintained a defensive perimeter as she assessed the secured artifacts. "The ascension sequence is incomplete," she called to Cynthia. "They haven't extracted the binding protocols that complete the ritual." This exploit Ned Team Eclipse's continued operation despite Cynthia and Garchomp disabling their equipment. Without the complete sequence, the stolen knowledge remained functionally limited. Kurama, having neutralized the resonator, now engaged multiple opponents with extraordinary coordination. The Fox's 9 tails operated almost independently, each targeting different threats with elemental attacks perfectly calibrated to their vulnerabilities. A Houndoom retreated with frost-covered limbs, a Skuntank reeled from precisely targeted electric shock, a Spiritomb found its spectral form temporarily destabilized by what appeared to be purifying energy. The Fox's battle capability far exceeded conventional understanding of Nanetto's limitations, further evidence of his unique nature and connection to Naruto's chakra system. Dr. Vega observed this display with clinical interest despite the deteriorating tactical situation. "Fascinating," she murmured, seemingly speaking to herself. "The 9-tailed entity maintains independent manipulation capabilities even separated from its primary host. The symbiotic relationship transcends physical proximity." Her analytical detachment in the midst of battle was perhaps more disturbing than outright aggression, suggesting she valued the observational data over the operation's immediate success. "You're collecting information even now," Cynthia realized, erecting Garchomp to maintain pressure on the Claydol. "This isn't just about the dragon ritual. Everything is data, champion," Vega replied with unsettling calm. "Success or failure, both yield valuable insights when properly analyzed." A thunderous crack interrupted their exchange as a section of the cavern wall collapsed under combined attacks from Zinnia's Salamence and several Team Eclipse Pokémon. Daylight flooded through the newly created opening, revealing the mountain exterior and a troubling development: 3 Eclipse transport vehicles hovering beyond the breach, extraction cables already descending toward the containers holding the stolen panels. "Accelerated extraction protocol initiated," Vega announced into a wrist communicator. "Secure primary objective materials. Second, ARI team will continue ritual site documentation." Understanding the imminent threat of losing the artifacts permanently, Cynthia made a tactical decision. "Garchomp, intercept those cables." "Kurama." But the Fox was already moving, 9 tails propelling him in a blur of motion toward the extraction containers. As Team Eclipse operatives secured attachment points to the first container, Kurama unleashed a concentrated energy blast that severed the cables with surgical precision. The container crashed back to the cavern floor, its reinforced structure preventing damage to the contents but disrupting the extraction sequence. Team Eclipse security converged on this new threat, momentarily drawing attention from Cynthia, who seized the opportunity to reclaim a second container with her Salamence's assistance. Vega observed these developments with the first signs of genuine concern. "Adjust extraction priority," she commanded. "Secure Panel 3 at all costs. It contains the dimensional harmonization sequence." The specific reference to dimensional harmonization caught Cynthia's attention immediately. Panel 3, still secured in its container near the cavern breach, potentially Kanta. In the very information they had come to Meteor Falls seeking. "Kurama," Cynthia called, pointing toward the prioritized container. Panel 3. The fox acknowledged with a flick of his tails, already adjusting his trajectory to intercept the critical target. Team Eclipse security recognized the shift in focus, multiple operatives and Pokémon moving to create a defensive formation around the container. Vega herself moved toward the priority panel, her cladle providing cover as she activated what appeared to be a personal teleportation device, technology restricted to emergency response organizations and specifically prohibited for private use. "The synchronization approaches regardless of our petty conflicts," she called to Cynthia, her voice carrying an unsettling note of certainty. "The boundaries thin, champion. We merely seek to ensure humanity controls the passages rather than remaining at the mercy of capricious legendary beings." The declaration revealed a philosophical dimension to Team Eclipse's activities beyond mere power acquisition, a belief that dimensional boundaries should be subject to human management rather than natural or legendary oversight. Before Cynthia could respond, a new presence entered the conflict, one that instantly transformed the battlefield dynamics. Through the breached cavern wall soared a massive serpentine form, emerald scales gleaming in the mountain sunlight as it unleashed a roar that shook the very foundations of the chamber. "Rayquaza," Cynthia breathed, recognizing the legendary dragon that had bonded with Naruto. The SKY High Pokemon's sudden appearance created a momentary pause in hostilities, both sides processing the implications of this unexpected development. Rayquaza hovered at the breach point, yellow eyes surveying the conflict with ancient intelligence. Zinnia's reaction was immediate and profound. She dropped to one knee, right fist pressed to her heart in a traditional gesture of draconic respect. "Sky Lord," she acknowledged, voice carrying equal measures of awe and uncertainty. "You honor the sacred site with your presence." Team Eclipse operatives displayed less reverence and more tactical concern, weapons and Pokémon reorienting toward this new threat. Dr. Vega's expression revealed complex calculations as she assessed the legendary Pokémon's intervention. "Fascinating timing," she murmured, fingers moving rapidly over her wrist device. "Resonance patterns must have triggered a territorial response. Adjust containment protocols." Before she could complete the command, Rayquaza moved with explosive speed. The dragon twisted through the air with impossible grace for its massive size, positioning itself directly above the container holding Panel 3. With precision that defied its destructive capability, Rayquaza used its tail to lift the container clear of Team Eclipse's defensive formation. The maneuver displayed not random aggression but deliberate, calculated intervention on protection of specific knowledge rather than general territorial defense. "It understands," Zinnia whispered, watching in astonishment as Rayquaza delivered the container to her position. "The Sky Lord recognizes the ritual's significance." Vega's response was immediate and pragmatic. "Tactical withdrawal," she commanded, activating her teleportation device. "Secure all obtained data. This development requires reanalysis." As Team Eclipse operatives initiated coordinated retreat procedures, Rayquaza maintained position near Zinnia, its massive form creating a protective barrier between sacred artifacts and potential threats. The legendary Pokémon's behavior suggested purpose beyond mere coincidence, as if responding to specific concern rather than random territorial intrusion. Rama approached the dragon with evident familiarity, Ninetales moving in patterns that appeared communicative rather than threatening. Rayquaza lowered its massive head, yellow eyes focusing on the fox with unmistakable recognition. "They know each other," Zinnia observed, scholarly fascination temporarily overriding traditional protocol. The Sky Lord acknowledges the nine-tailed one as ally. They share a connection through Naruto, Cynthia explained, joining them as the last Team Eclipse transport disappeared beyond the mountain ridge. Part of the bond that brought 6 legendary Pokémon into unprecedented cooperation. Zinnia's expression reflected internal conflict, traditional beliefs challenged by direct observation. Our oldest songs speak of the Sky Lord's solitary nature. It would form allegiance with other legendary beings, let alone follow a human partner. Her voice trailed off as she studied Rayquaza more carefully, noting subtle differences in its aura and airing that might escape less experienced observers. Yet it is changed, she continued slowly. Not diminished but harmonized. As if frequencies long discordant have found resonance. The poetic description aligned with their scientific observations of the chakra bond Naruto had established. Not domination of legendary will but synchronization of compatible energies. Kurama and Rayquaza continued their silent communion. The fox occasionally projecting blue chakra that the dragon appeared to sense despite lacking direct physical contact. After several moments, Rayquaza raised its head, issuing a roar that echoed through the mountain chamber before fixing its gaze on Zinnia with unmistakable intentionality. The lorekeeper straightened, meeting the legendary Pokémon's eyes with appropriate respect. The Sky Lord wishes something of me, she stated, centuries of Dragon Clan training evident in her receptive posture. Kurama approached Zinnia, gently nudging the dimensional resonant CE scanner she had set aside during the battle. The fox's intention became clear as he activated the visualization function, displaying the energy patterns they had recorded at Spear Pillar, specifically. The seal configuration Naruto had established before his departure. Rayquaza moved closer, its massive head hovering near the display with evident interest. The dragon's presence affected the visualization itself. Energy patterns shifting and strengthening in response to proximity, certain elements becoming more pronounced while others receded. Interactive resonance, Cynthia noted, quickly. Adjusting the scanner to record these changes. Rayquaza is modifying the pattern through its presence alone. Not modifying, Zinnia corrected, her expression revealing dawning understanding. Completing. The Sky Lord provides elements missing from your current configuration, pieces of the dimensional passage that require draconic energy to stabilize. This aligned with what Sabrina had detected. Through psychic impression. That Naruto's seal was intentionally designed for two-part completion, with elements from both sides of the dimensional barrier required for safe passage. The synchronization event, Cynthia reasoned aloud. Rayquaza's energy signature is necessary to complete the passage matrix during the dimensional thinning. Zinnia nodded slowly, her role as lorekeeper providing context for this revelation. The ascension ritual our ancestors performed never merely called Rayquaza from distant skies, it established harmonic resonance with the dragon's extra-dimensional aspects. Her fingers traced patterns in the air that matched elements of the visualized seal. The Sky Lord exists partially beyond conventional space, touching realms our limited perception cannot comprehend. This profound insight connected multiple research threads, explaining why Team Eclipse targeted dragon lore specifically, why Rayquaza had formed unprecedented bond with Naruto, and why the diamond Seonal seal required draconic energy for completion. As if confirming this understanding, Rayquaza moved in a slow circle around the chamber, its body tracing patterns that corresponded to specific elements of the carved ritual sequence still embedded in the walls. The dragon was demonstrating the proper flow of energies, showing rather than telling, teaching through movement what written language could only approximate. Zinnia observed with the focused attention of someone witnessing sacred knowledge transmitted directly from its source. The true ritual, she breathed, fingers moving to mimic the patterns Rayquaza demonstrated. Not just the forms recorded in stone, but the living energy sequence as the Sky Lord itself performs it. Kurama sat beside Cynthia, nine tails swaying gently, as they watched this extraordinary interaction between lorekeeper and legendary Pokémon. The fox's expression conveyed satisfaction, as if a planned convergence was unfolding according to design rather than coincidence. You anticipated this, Cynthia realized, studying Kurama with newfound appreciation. Our journey to Meteor Falls wasn't just about research, you knew Rayquaza would respond to the dragon lore connection. The fox made a sound that somehow conveyed affirmation without human language. One tail pointed to the dimensional scanner, then to his heart, then to the sky, a sequence of gestures that suggested connectivity between multiple elements. A network of awareness, Cynthia interpreted. You maintain connection not just to Naruto but to all 6 legendary partners. This expanded their understanding of Kurama's unique role significantly. The fox wasn't merely waiting for Naruto's return but actively coordinating between legendary Pokémon, maintaining the energy network that would eventually facilitate dimensional reunion. After completing its demonstrative circuit of the chamber, Rayquaza returned to hover near Zinnia. The dragon's yellow eyes studied her with assessment that transcended ordinary Pokémon behavior, evaluating her understanding of what had been shown. Zinnia met this examination with appropriate gravity. I have witnessed the true ascension pattern, Sky Lord. The Draconid people will correct our recorded knowledge accordingly. This exchange represented something profound. Direct transmission of sacred knowledge from legendary source to human keeper. Bypassing centuries of potential transcription errors or misinterpretations. Rayquaza's attention shifted to Cynthia next, its massive head inclining slightly in what appeared to be acknowledgement of her role in the unfolding situation. Then, with deliberate movement, the dragon turned toward the cavern breach, positioning itself to depart. It returns to Spear Pillar, Cynthia surmised, understanding the implication. To prepare for the synchronization event. Before leaving, however, Rayquaza performed one final, unexpected action. The dragon descended to where Kurama sat, lowering its head until it touched the fox's forehead in a gesture of unmistakable significance. A brief pulse of energy passed between them, visible as a momentary harmonic resonance pattern that the scanner captured in perfect detail. Then, with a powerful surge of its serpentine body, Rayquaza launched skyward, disappearing into the clouds with speed that belied its massive size. Silence filled the chamber in the legendary Pokémon's wake, broken eventually by Zinnia's thoughtful voice. I have misjudged your companion's relationship with the Sky Lord, she acknowledged, turning to Cynthia with newfound respect. What I perceived as presumptuous claim of ownership is something far more interesting, a harmonization that honors Rayquaza's nature rather than attempting to subjugate it. The administration represented significant progress in their diplomatic engagement with the Lorekeeper. Naruto's approach to legendary Pokémon differs fundamentally from conventional training, Cynthia explained, choosing her words carefully. He doesn't command them so much as synchronize with them, sharing energy that resonates with their natural frequencies. Zinnia considered this explanation, her expression reflecting the scholarly depth beneath her fierce exterior. The ancient concordance, she murmured, recognition dawning. Our oldest texts reference a time when humans and Pokémon shared common energy, when boundaries between them were permeable rather than fixed. She studied Kurama with renewed interest. Your nine-tailed companion embodies this principle, doesn't he? Neither fully Pokémon nor separate from his human partner. Despite physical distance, the insight demonstrated why Zinnia held the position of Lorekeeper despite her relative youth. Her understanding transcended mere memorization of tradition to grasp fundamental principles. Yes, Cynthia confirmed, seeing no reason to obscure what Zinnia had discerned through her own cultural framework. Kurama and Naruto share a bond that precedes their arrival in our world. Their energies are fundamentally intertwined. This acknowledgement shifted their interaction from cautious diplomatic exchange to more genuine intellectual engagement. Zinnia moved to examine the containers holding the sacred panels that Team Eclipse had attempted to steal, checking for damage before securing them properly. These must be returned to their proper positions, she declared. Though her tone had softened from earlier suspicion. The ritual sequence maintains energetic harmony when complete. Fragmentation disrupts the flow patterns. Of course, Cynthia agreed. We came seeking knowledge, not to remove artifacts from their cultural context. As they worked together to prepare the panels for reinstallation, Zinnia continued their discussion. The dimensional synchronization you mentioned, it occurs in 5 days at your Spear Pillar site. Yes. Our calculations suggest a natural thinning of barriers between specific dimensions, a window of opportunity for controlled passage if properly managed. Cynthia hesitated before adding, we believe Naruto is preparing corresponding protocols from his side. The water vision, Zinnia noted, connecting their earlier experience at the sacred pool with this new information. He communicated preparation status through the amplification medium. Exactly. We've established limite D-communication through dimensional resonance, but the approaching synchronization represents our first opportunity for physical transition since his departure. Kurama had moved to assist with the panels, demonstrating unexpected familiarity with proper handling protocols for sacred artifacts. The fox's careful attention to placement orientation suggested recognition of energetic alignment principles. Zinnia observed this behavior with scholarly interest. The nine-tailed one understands ritual energetics, she noted. Another indication that your companion from beyond shares knowledge structures with our oldest traditions. This observation aligned with patterns they had identified at multiple sites, certain fundamental principles of energy manipulation appearing across cultures and even dimensions, suggesting underlying universal constants rather than arbitrary constructs. We've found similar convergent patterns across regions, Cynthia confirmed. Spiral formations, triad energy structures, harmonic resonance configurations, all appearing in isolated cultures with no apparent contact. As they completed securing the first panel back into its proper position, Zinnia made a decision that would significantly impact their research. I will accompany you to Spear Pillar, she announced, her tone indicating this was a statement of intent rather than a request for permission. As lorekeeper of the Draconid people, I am obligated to witness this dimensional harmonization, particularly given the Sky Lord's direct involvement. The offer represented an invaluable addition to their preparations. Zinnia's traditional knowledge of draconic energy patterns would complement the scientific and psychic expertise they had already assembled. We would welcome your participation, Cynthia replied with genuine appreciation. Particularly your insights into the ritual elements Rayquaza demonstrated today. With the immediate crisis resolved and Team Eclipse temporarily driven from the sacred site, they focused on proper restoration of the extracted panels. Zinnia summoned additional Dragon Clan members who had been maintaining protective positions throughout the mountain, establishing security protocols to prevent future incursions. As they worked, Kurama maintained periodic contact with the dimensional scanner, apparently monitoring fluctuations in the resonance patterns. The fox's attentive vigilance suggested ongoing communication with the network of legendary partners scattered across regions but connected through shared energy. Your companion believes contact is imminent, Zinnia observed. Noting the fox's behavior, his attention pattern suggests anticipation rather than mere monitoring. The resonance has been strengthening daily, Cynthia confirmed, checking the most recent data streams. Particularly since Sabrina established psychic monitoring protocols in Saffron City. It's as if each connection point reinforces the others, creating a network of increasing stability. This network theory had significant implications for their understanding of dimensional mechanics, suggesting that connections between worlds operated more like an ecosystem of related pathways than isolated breaches. A web rather than a door, Zinnia suggested, demonstrating her conceptual flexibility despite traditional frameworks. Each strand strengthening the whole. As evening approached, they completed restoration of the sacred panels and established enhanced security measures throughout the cavern system. Zinnia invited them to the Draconid settlement high on the mountain, a rare privilege for outsiders, offering opportunity to examine additional historical records relevant to dimensional transit. The settlement itself proved fascinating, structures built in harmony with natural rock formations, incorporating meteoric elements into living spaces that blurred distinction between human habitation and natural environment. Community members moved with the distinctive grace of those raised in dragon tradition, their relationship with powerful Pokémon partners evident in synchronized movement patterns. In the settlement's central gathering space, illuminated by crystalline formations that captured and amplified the setting sun's rays, Zinnia presented Cynthia and Kurama to the clan elders, ancient keepers of dragon wisdom whose weathered faces reflected decades of communion with legendary beings. These visitors have been acknowledged by the Sky Lord itself, Zinnia explained, her formal tone conveying the significance of this introduction. They prepare for dimensional harmonization that involves Rayquaza's direct participation. The eldest among them, a woman whose white hair was adorned with scales that had once belonged to Dragon Paw. RTNERS long past, studied them with penetrating intensity. The nine-tailed one carries harmony bond, she observed, her voice surprisingly strong despite her apparent age. Ancient energy flows through modern form. The concordance awakens once more. The assessment, delivered with absolute certainty, carried weight beyond mere observation. This was recognition from a tradition that had maintained Ned relationship with legendary dragons since Hoen's earliest human settlements. We seek understanding of proper dimensional transit protocols, Cynthia explained respectfully. To ensure balance is maintained during the approaching synchronization. The elder nodded slowly, appearing unsurprised by this statement. The star paths open and close in cycles older than human memory, she replied. When the dragon flies between worlds, proper harmony must be maintained on both sides of the passage. She gestured to Zinnia, who brought forward a meteorite fragment mounted on a ceremonial stand. The stone glowed with subtle inner light, responding to proximity in a manner suggesting sensitivity to living energy. This fell during the last great convergence, the elder explained. When the boundaries thinned enough for physical matter to transition naturally, it remembers the passage state, the proper frequency of harmonious crossing. At her gesture, Kurama approached the meteorite cautiously. The fox studied the stone with evident interest before gently touching one paw to its surface. Immediately, the meteorite's inner light intensified, pulsing in patterns that matched the dimensional resonance they had been monitoring. Recognition, the elder noted with satisfaction. The star stone remembers your energy signature, or one fundamentally similar. Your kind has traversed the great dark before. This revelation suggested dimensional crossings involving entities similar to Kurama had occurred in past convergence cycles, that what they were experiencing had historical precedent beyond recorded memory. Does your tradition maintain records of these previous crossings? Cynthia asked, academic excitement carefully modulated to maintain appropriate respect for sacred knowledge. The elder considered her question before responding. Not as your scholars would recognize. We maintain memory songs, energy impressions, resonance patterns passed from keeper to keeper across generations. She gestured to various elders seated around the gathering space. We are the living record, each holding fragments of the whole. This approach to knowledge preservation, embodied than documented, represented a fundamentally different epistemology than academic tradition. Yet its effectiveness was demonstrated by their accurate maintenance of ritual sequences over millennia. As confirmed by Rayquaza's direct validation. Would you be willing to share these memory songs related to dimensional crossing? Cynthia inquired carefully. They could prove invaluable to ensuring proper protocols during the approaching synchronization. The elder studied her with assessment that went beyond surface evaluation, as if reading intention rather than merely hearing words. Zinnia will accompany you to the convergence site, she finally declared. Through her, our relevant knowledge will be accessible. The lorekeeper serves as bridge between traditions, just as your nine-tailed companion serves as bridge between worlds. The parallel was apt, highlighting Zinnia's unique position within Dragon Clan hierarchy, maintaining traditional knowledge while engaging with external developments that affected their sacred charge. We are honored by this arrangement, Cynthia acknowledged, recognizing the significant trust being extended. As the formal exchange concluded, the Lemon prepared an evening meal that incorporated ceremonial elements, foods associated with draconic energy, served in patterns reflecting cosmic arrangements. The shared sustenance represented more than hospitality. It established energetic harmony between visitors and clan members, creating appropriate context for knowledge exchange. During the meal, Zinnia elaborated on her understanding of Rayquaza's demonstration in the cavern. The Sky Lord showed specific energy flow patterns corresponding to dimensional thinning cycles, she explained, tracing designs in the air that matched elements of their recorded resonance patterns. What our written records preserve as fixed sequences, Rayquaza revealed as dynamic processes, adapting to specific dimensional frequencies rather than following rigid formulas. This insight aligned with their developing theory of resonance harmonization, that successful transit required attunement to existing dimensional frequencies rather than forced breach of established boundaries. Adaptation rather than imposition, Cynthia confirmed, connecting this traditional knowledge with their scientific framework. Which explains why Team Eclipse's attempts Avenue proven unstable despite their technological sophistication. They seek to command what must be harmonized with, Zinnia agreed, her expression reflecting scholarly disapproval of such approach. The star paths respond to resonance, not force. As their discussion continued into evening, Kurama maintained periodic contact with the meteorite fragment, apparently using it to enhance his connect to the dimensional resonance network. The fox's 9 tails occasionally glowed with subtle energy patterns that matched frequencies displayed on Cynthia's monitoring equipment. He strengthens the connection web, Zinnia observed, watching this process with professional interest, using the star stone's natural amplification properties to extend his range. This ongoing enhancement of their communication network represented critical preparation for the approaching synchronization event. Each connection point they established, Saffron's psychic resonance, Meteor Falls, Draconic Energy, SP. Irpilar's legendary concentration, created another strand in the web that would eventually support physical passage. As night settled over the mountain settlement, stars emerging with remarkable clarity in the high-altitude air, Zinnia led them to quarters prepared for honored guests. The space incorporated meteoric elements similar to those in the ceremonial chamber, creating an environment naturally conducive to dimensional sensitivity. Rest well, the lorekeeper advised as she prepared to leave them for the night. Tomorrow we will review the complete ascension ritual in preparation for the synchronization event. The proper sequences must be internalized, not merely memorized. After Zinnia's departure, Cynthia found herself contemplating the extraordinary developments of recent days. What had begun as academic research into dimensional anomalies had evolved into coordination of unprecedented scope, bringing together psychic experts, traditional knowledge keepers, legendary Pokémon, and interdimensional travelers in collaborative preparation for controlled contact between worlds. Kurama settled nearby, 9 tails arranged in meditative configuration as he maintained subtle connection to the resonance network. The fox's calm vigilance conveyed confidence rather than anxiety, the patience of a being accustomed to thinking in timeframes beyond human standard. 5 days, Cynthia murmured, reviewing their preparation timeline. We return to Spear Pillar tomorrow, meet Sabrina the following day, then make final adjustments before the synchronization point. Kurama's expression suggested more than mere acknowledgement of this schedule, a deeper anticipation that transcended professional interest. For the fox, this represented potential reunion with his partner after separation that, while necessary, remained fundamentally incomplete. The personal dimension of their scientific endeavor struck Cynthia anew. Beyond theoretical significance or academic achievement, successful synchronization meant restoration of bonds temporarily suspended by dimensional necessity, Kurama and Naruto's partnership foremost among them. As she settled into rest, Cynthia found her thoughts returning to the brief image they had glimpsed in the sacred pool, Naruto in meditation, working toward the same goal from his side of the dimensional barrier. Despite the brevity of their acquaintance before his departure, she found herself looking forward to continuing conversations interrupted by circumstance, to learning more about the extraordinary person who had formed unprecedented bonds with legendary beings. Scientific curiosity, certainly, but something more personal as well. A connection formed quickly yet meaningfully during shared crisis and cooperation. Outside their quarters, meteoric crystals embedded in the settlement's structures pulsed with subtle light, resonating with cosmic frequencies that had guided the Draconid people for millennia. Within this ancient harmony, preparations for new connection between worlds continued even as consciousness yielded to necessary rest. 5 days until dimensional synchronization. The countdown continued. Morning brought clear skies and strengthened resolve. The Draconid settlement awakened with practiced harmony, community members and their dragon partners moving through dawn rituals that honored celestial cycles governing their traditional way of life. Zinnia appeared as they completed preparations for departure, her traveling gear already secured, an expression reflecting formal determination. The elders are formed reading rituals through the night, she informed them. The star patterns confirm approaching convergence. Dimensional boundaries thin precisely as your calculations predicted. This independent confirmation through traditional methods reinforced their scientific findings, different methodologies arriving at identical conclusions through separate epistemological frameworks. Did the reading-gs reveal any unexpected elements we should prepare for? Cynthia asked, recognizing the value of complementary knowledge systems. The convergence brings opportunity but also vulnerability, Zinnia replied, her tone conveying appropriate gravity. What can pass from there to here may also pass from here to there. The star thieves understand this principle, It motivates their continued efforts despite previous failure. The warning aligned with concerns they had already considered, that Team Eclipse might attempt to exploit the synchronization event for their own purposes, potentially endangering both worlds in the process. "We've established multi-layered security protocols at Spear Pillar," Cynthia assured her. "Both technological and Pokémon-based defenses coordinated through Champion Authority." Zinnia nodded, though her expression suggested cautious assessment rather than complete reassurance. "The clan will dispatch additional guardians to key convergence points identified in our tradition. The web must be protected at all connection nodes, not merely the primary nexus." This systemic approach demonstrated sophisticated understanding of dimensional mechanics through traditional framework, recognizing that security at Spear Pillar alone might prove insufficient if Team Eclipse targeted secondary resonance points instead. As they prepared to depart the settlement, the elder who had addressed them previously approached with ceremonial purpose. She carried a small container crafted from meteoric material, its surface etched with draconic symbols that glowed with subtle inner light. "For the nine-tailed one," she announced, presenting the container to Kurama directly rather than through human intermediary. "Essence of the Star Stone, prepared according to ancient harmony principles. It will strengthen your connection to the dragon paths during critical transition." Kurama received the gift with evident respect, bowing his head in formal acknowledgement of its significance. The fox's 9 tails arranged themselves in a pattern that somehow conveyed gratitude without human language, a gesture the elder appeared to understand perfectly. "The concordance awakens," she stated with satisfaction. "Old patterns emerge in new forms. Watch for echoes of previous crossings, history spirals rather than repeats." With this cryptic but seemingly significant advice imparted, the elder rejoined her community as they gathered to witness the departure. Zinnia's salamence materialized with a roar that echoed against the mountain stone, a sound answered by multiple Drago N partners throughout the settlement in harmonic acknowledgement. "We travel first to Meteor Falls, Upper Sanctuary," Zinnia explained as they prepared for flight. "There are materials preserved there that should accompany us to your convergence site, stabilizing elements with proven harmonization properties." The journey to this higher sanctuary revealed aspects of Meteor Falls invisible from conventional access points, concealed plateaus where meteoric impact had created natural amphitheaters, crystal formations that captured and redirected sunlight in patterns corresponding to celestial movements. Ancient carvings visible only from aerial perspective that depicted dragon forms transitioning between distinct realms. The sanctuary itself occupied a crater near the mountain's peak, access-ble only by flight or treacherous climbing paths deliberately left unmaintained. Here, meteoritic concentration reached extraordinary levels, the very ground glittering with embedded fragments that responded to their presence with subtle illumination. "The highest concentration of star stone in the known world," Zinnia explained as salamence landed gracefully despite the uneven terrain. "When dimensional boundaries thin naturally, this site often manifests physical evidence first, matter transitioning between realms through path of least resistance." Cynthia's scientific interest intensified at this revelation. "Have you documented these manifestations?" The composition of transitional matter could provide crucial data on interdimensional physics. "The clan maintains samples from 17 documented convergences," Zinnia confirmed, leading them toward a structure built directly into the crater wall, each with distinct properties reflecting its origin dimension. The repository with improved extraordinary, a naturally formed chamber enhanced with precision stonework, housing collection vessels of varying antiquity. Each contained specimens organized according to traditional classification system that predated modern taxonomy by millennia yet demonstrated remarkable analytical sophistication. Zinnia selected specific samples with practiced efficiency, securing them in special IZED containers designed to maintain energetic integrity during transport. "These will serve as harmonic reference points during the synchronization event," she explained. "Matter that has successful transition dimensions while maintaining structural cohesion." Kurama observed this selection process with evident interest, occasionally indicating specific specimens through subtle movements. Zinnia appeared to acknowledge in her choices. The fox's input suggested recognition of particular resonance patterns compatible with their developing harmonization framework. With necessary materials secured, they prepared for the longer journey to Sinnoh. Zinnia's salamence could maintain extended flight, but crossing such distance required strategic rest points and navigation considerations. We follow the dragon's wind path, Zinnia decided, consulting meteorological conditions with practiced assessment. The high-altitude current flows directly toward Mount Coronet this season. Salami. NCE can ride it with minimal energy expenditure. This traditional knowledge of seasonal air currents demonstrated practical wisdom accumulated through generations of dragon partnership, understanding natural systems through direct experience rather than instrumentation. As they soared above Hoen's diverse landscapes, Cynthia maintained regular communication with the Spear Pillar research team. Professor Oak had established primary monitoring systems according to specifications developed from their Saffron City findings. Sabrina had arrived ahead of schedule, her psychic sensitivity already detecting increased resonance activity as the synchronization point approached. The frequency patterns are evolving rapidly, Oak reported via secure communication channel. Developing complexity suggesting intentional refinement rather than random fluctuation. Sabrina believes someone on the other side is actively calibrating the resonance. Naruto, Cynthia concluded, sharing a meaningful glance with Kurama. He's preparing the connection from his side. The fox's expression confirmed this assessment, Ninetails moving in patterns that suggested satisfaction with developments beyond their immediate perception. Their journey continued through changing weather and landscapes, Zinnia's expert guidance navigating optimal routes that balanced efficiency with necessary energy conservation. Throughout the flight, Kurama maintained periodic contact with the dimensional scanner, monitoring resonance patterns that grew increasingly structured as they approached Sinnoh. By late afternoon of the following day, Mount Coronet's distinctive profile appeared on the horizon, the massive mountain range that formed Sinnoh's central spine and housed its most sacred sites. As they approached, evidence of increased security became apparent. League rangers patrolling expanded perimeters, psychic barriers established at key access points, periodic aerial surveillance by trained specialists. Your preparations are substantial, Zinnia observed, noting the multi-layered defensive measures. Yet I see no attempt to restrict the Sky Lord's movement, wise decision. Rayquaza's cooperation is voluntary, Cynthia confirmed. All security protocols are designed to work with legendary Pokémon partners rather than constrain them. They landed at a designated arrival point below Spear Pillar Prop. A plateau adapted as temporary research base for the synchronization project. Here, multiple monitoring stations had been established, each focused on different aspects of the approaching dimensional event. Professor Oak greeted them personally, his typically cheerful demeanor tempered with appropriate scientific gravity given the unprecedented nature of their undertaking. Fascinating developments since your departure, he reported, leading them toward the central monitoring facility. The resonance patterns have established quasi-linguistic structure, recognizable periodicity and embed information content suggesting deliberate communication. Inside the primary research structure, displays showed multiple visualizations of the dimensional resonance, frequency analyses, energy distribution patterns, temporal fluctuation graphs. Each demonstrated increasing organization approaching the synchronization point, random noise giving way to structured information. Sabrina stood before the main display, her concentration evident as she tracked patterns invisible to normal perception. The gym leader's psychic sensitivity had proven invaluable in interpreting subtle variations human instrumentation might miss. The fox returns, she noted without turning, evidently sensing Kurama's presence through psychic means rather than conventional awareness. And brings new harmonic elements from the dragon tradition. She turned to acknowledge Zinnia with professional respect transcending their different methodological approaches. Your arrival is well timed. The draconic frequencies have intensified significantly in the past 12 hours. Zinnia moved to join her at the display, studying the visualizations with practiced assessment. The Sky Lord prepares the passage, she confirmed, identifying specific patterns within the complex data streams. These match the ascension sequences precisely. Rayquaza actively structures the dimensional approach. This confirmation from traditional perspective reinforced their scientific findings, multiple knowledge systems converging on identical conclusion through separate analytical frameworks. Kurama approached the central monitoring station, Ninetails fanning in familiar meditation pattern as he established direct connection to the resonance field. The fox's presence immediately affected displayed patterns, certain elements strengthening while others receded. The overall structure shifting toward greater coherence. Remarkable, Oak observed, adjusting instrumentation to better capture these changes. Direct manipulation of quantum-level interactions through what appears to be consciousness-directed energy application. The nine-tailed one refines the harmony, Zinnia translated into her traditional framework. Ing discordant frequencies toward proper resonance. Sabrina added her psychic perspective, creating conceptual bridges between incompatible reference frames, translation matrices for cross-dimensional information exchange. 3 different epistemological approaches describing the same phenomenon through distinct but complementary frameworks, scientific, traditional, and psychic, each capturing aspects the others might miss. As evening approached, they relocated to Spear Pillar proper to assess the seal site directly. The ancient platform stood silent under darkening skies, its weathered call. UMNS framing the location where dimensional boundaries had temporarily parted to allow Naruto's return to his home world. The seal itself remained visible, energy patterns inscribed into reality rather than physical matter, glowing with subtle blue light that intensified gradually as they approached. Around this central point, monitoring equipment had been carefully positioned to record without disrupting the delicate energy structure. The dimensional barrier thickness has decreased approximately 17% since initial measurement, Oak reported, consulting specialized equipment. Continuing to thin at accelerating rate as synchronization approaches. Yet the structural integrity remains stable, Sabrina added, her psychic senses evaluating aspects beyond technological measurement. The seal design prevents uncontrolled breach despite increasing permeability. Zinnia approached the seal pattern carefully, her traditional training evident in respectful movements that Acno WL edged the power contained within these energy configurations. The dragon paths align correctly, she confirmed after careful assessment. The Sky Lord's influence maintains proper directional orientation despite thinning barriers. Kurama moved to the seal's center, nine tails spreading in full array as he established direct connection to the interdimensional construct. Blue chakra emanated from his form, interacting with the seal pattern in visible harmonization that both strengthened and refined its structure. He's not just monitoring, Cynthia realized, watching this precise energy manipulation. He's actively maintaining the seal's stability while allowing controlled permeability, balancing seemingly contradictory functions with remarkable precision. As darkness fell completely over Spear Pillar, stars emerging in the clear mountain air, the gathering of extraordinary minds and abilities continued their preparations for an event unprecedented in recorded history, controlled dimensional synchronization with conscious participation from both sides of the cosmic barrier. 4 days remained until the moment of perfect alignment. Their web of connection points, psychic, draconic, legendary, scientific, continued to strengthen in anticipation of this approaching convergence. And somewhere beyond conventional perception, they all sensed growing certainty that someone worked with equal determination from the other side, a whiskered shinobi with unshakable dedication to promises made and bonds formed, preparing his own harmonization protocols for the moment when worlds WOU.LD briefly touch across the infinite void. The countdown continued, each hour bringing them closer to dimensional reunion. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.